Hello there and welcome to AM Prime on WESN Content Capital. I'm Keaton Shaw. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. My first guest is no stranger to WESN, no stranger to the program as well. In fact, he has another show himself, and in some circumstances, I'm actually glad that he's never asked me to be a guest on his show. Rather, it's better that he's a guest on my show. I'm speaking about the psychologist himself, Mr. Sule A. Joseph. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Keaton. Thanks for having me. And I take note of that. I'll put you down as a guest for future episodes.
That was a hint to keep on the good streak that you're on, man.
Morning,
Sule. So we're actually here to speak about a rather serious topic. It's something of which you've actually assessed before on your program and you've had discussions about, and that is in reference to something called tabanka. Now, people think it's a joke. People think it's just a terminology in Trinidad, but it's something that is genuine, something that is very much real. In your assessments and your discussions, what is it that you learned in regards to tabanka and how society perceives tabanka and even deals with tabanka?
Well, tabanka is a colloquial term for a very real, I won't call it phenomenon, but experience. Right? It's a very real emotional and psychological experience, and it's a colloquial term that we utilize to capture that. Now, outside of Trinidad, based on the symptomologies or the experience that patients have, we would usually, the persons would internationally refer to that perhaps as depression, as a depressive symptom. But in Trinidad, we have a specific term for when that depression comes from a failed relationship, or experiencing loss or grieving the loss of something that you hold very dear. So an experience, you can have tabanka from an experience. You talk about tabanka, carnival tabanka, or maybe Christmas tabanka, or anything like that, or tabanka after leaving a relationship. But what I want to establish and I want people to understand is that it's a very real experience. And though we laugh at the term tabanka, it describes a very specific depression type symptomology. So it's very real and it's very serious.
Okay, so let me just, let's clarify that for a second. Are you suggesting it's a symptom of depression or an actual form of depression?
It's a form of depression. But generally, when we talk of when we talk about the psychological issues, if you want to put it that way, there are symptoms that mark the psychological issue. So if we're talking about depression, different types of depression would be marked by different symptomology. So different symptoms. You have symptoms that may cause a diagnosis for a certain mental illness. All right? And I'm saying that tabanka, when we talk about tabanka usually falls in line with what we'll describe as a depression based on its symptomology. So based on the symptoms that we experience and so on in tabanka, it would fall very clearly within the remit of depression.
What are some of the psychological symptoms associated with this form of depression?
So, of course, you'll see things for anybody who's experienced tabanka. I'm certain at some point, Keaton, you would have experienced it. And not just you, I'm not attacking you, I'm just saying anybody would have experienced it, myself included. Generally, it's the loss of appetite, lack of motivation to do anything, accomplish things. Perhaps you want to stay in bed frequently, regularly. A loss of enjoyment from experiences and things that you would usually enjoy or used to enjoy at a certain level, you now find very difficult to enjoy on that level. Maybe some irritability, preferring to be isolation, self-isolation, and so on. You hear people talking about not wanting to get out of bed, staying in bed for long periods, not being very productive, not exercising, not doing things that they were accustomed doing. Those sorts of things usually we see when we talk about tabanka and depression. Perhaps even for men, some slight variations and differences. You may see some heightened levels of aggression and irritability.
Now, I understand what you're describing there, and it more or less boils down to a lethargy, a lack of energy, a lack of zeal, becoming disinterested with a lot of things. But is there an association, or rather what is the association between this form of depression that we're speaking about and conflict? That anger or aggressive type behavior and approach to certain triggers?
Yes, there can be. What you can find is what we call maladaptive, which sounds like a big word, but maladaptive coping mechanisms just refers to people using poor coping strategies. And by coping, of course, we mean the tools, emotional or otherwise, that you use to treat with issues. In this instance, the tobacco or the depressive symptoms. All right. And when we talk about maladaptive coping, we're talking about using negative coping or unhealthy coping strategies to treat with it. And one of those things could be anger. All right. So for men, just this week spoke about it with the Office of the Prime Minister when International Men's Day that went recently. One of the things men tend to do, or society allows men to do, is to have very limited feelings or express limited emotions. And the couple limited emotions that we allow men to experience, one is anger. And so when we talk about maladaptive coping mechanisms, we can see very easily how men can shift from feeling depressed and so on, trying to take back their power by becoming angry and lashing outward. Right? So that becoming angry and then lashing outward then becomes a very negative or maladaptive coping mechanism to treat with that depression or that depressive state.
When you say that we only allow men to feel a limited amount of certain emotions, in defining we, are you referring to men as a grouping within society, men only allowing men to feel that way, or society as a whole, everyone that makes up society?
I don't want to make it sound as though it's a deliberate attempt, but what we found, negating all of the history and so on, is that generally, the way we have come to conceptualize what a man should and shouldn't be and so on, although we are trying to move away from that, to be honest, in recent times. Generally, when we speak about it, I talk about 2.5 emotions that men are allowed, when I say allowed by society to feel. It comes across as normative, as normal, and this is the behavior that is acceptable, people expect from men and so on, would be 1, anger, 2, happiness or enjoyment, and 3, what I like to call normal. When you ask me how they feel, normal, it's just this normal, this flat effect, this feat that I consider that to be half a feeling, if you want to call it that. But 2.5 to 3 feelings that general society is accepting of men experiencing. When you don't expect to see a big, strong man crying openly in the streets and expressing sadness and so on. Generally what you might hear somebody saying, big hard back man like you, man up. All right? And of course, there are several reasons for that. Some of which nobody asked us if we are afraid of dead rats or cockroaches and so on as children. We are just expected to be the ones to go take the cockroach out of the house, or take the rat out of the house, or to kill the rat, and so on. Because those are the social norms, expectations of men. And so very early we are taught to bury whatever our feelings are and meet the expectation of the society. So when we talk now about tobacco and experiencing that, it's a legitimate form of depression, and we know that any kind of loss, there's a cycle that you go through in grieving. But for a lot of us men, because of how we've been taught and socialized through society, we feel as though we're not allowed to go through that natural cycle. And so what we do is we practice these maladaptive coping mechanisms. And anger is a big part of that. So we are allowed to get angry, and instead of going through the grieving process, which anger is a part of, by the way, but something that part of the cycle that you go through. But we skip the process, jump to anger oftentimes, and lash out.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's oftentimes where we can see men doing a lot of what persons may consider detrimental behaviors, aggressive behaviors, lashing out a woman and so on or whatever. And for a lot of men, and not all perhaps, but for a lot of them, it's an attempt to recapture or take control of the situation, as we've been taught that men should do. It's about power, it's about reclaiming that control when you feel you've lost it.
Mm-hmm. Now, in that sense, I understand what you're saying, and I very much understand your explanation. But is that, though it's an explanation, is it still justified that whilst we understand what causes it and what leads to it, is it justified such extreme levels of at times, conflict or violence?
Justified. Oh, that's a strong word to say that.
And I'm speaking purely from a psychological aspect here. I'm speaking, this has nothing to do with law or any arguments as such. But if we're discussing the symptoms and what could possibly cause these symptoms and what these symptoms could lead to, in terms of justification.
I will not use the word justify. I will not use the word, because I can't say we are not animalistic in terms of driven and solely functioning by our impulses only. And I can go into the whole ego and super ego of it, but the point really is that we can manage our impulses. That's what makes us, a big part of what makes us human, all right? That separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom and so on, right? We can manage our impulses. So to say that it justifies, I won't say that it justifies. That's a strong word, because justifies kind of forgives the behavior, maybe unintentionally, but there's an inherentness to with justification that kind of excuses the behavior, and so I can't say that it does that. But what I can say is that it does legitimately sometimes explain why these behaviors occur, or why men have these impulses. All right, so that yes, there are numerous factors that would lead to a man going through a depressive symptom, like tobacco and so on, going through tobacco, and then lashing out and becoming angry, lashing out, trying to reclaim power and control and that sort of thing, and then doing some extreme behavior. So it does explain it. But to say that it justifies, I can't say that it justifies. No, because there are other ways to cope. People go through tobacco all the time. And not everybody chooses to cope with tobacco in such extreme negative way.
Mm-hmm. In that regard, you said that's what we're not animalistic. Arguably, it's very difficult to, when you take a look at what's happening, to say, okay, I fully agree with you. But in that regard, Sule, really, from all that is being portrayed and all that is being experienced and seen, do we really know how to deal with our emotions? Do we really know how to assess our own behavior, or even try to understand what it is we are feeling?
That is like asking. That's like asking somebody who has perhaps seen a car on television, who may understand, based on the information that they've had in the past, the concept of how a car should work and asking them then to drive it. So you would get, maybe after a couple tries, you might move, might get the car moving and so on. But driving is a skill, and it's a skill that you become better at through practice. You become proficient. All right. Maybe never totally a master, because every and anybody can get into an accident, dependent on what the conditions are that surround them, the road, potholes, so on. All right. If a certain local water agency is fighting you and has a bunch of potholes in the road and so on, may impact upon your driving ability. But I want you to think about it like that, because you're asking for persons to be able to manage emotions and so on, and cope, and that is a skill. That's a skill. That's a skill that people need to learn. So you can see other people practice it. You can see other people function it, model behavior. So you may have a good conceptualization of how it should or ought to work, and how you can perhaps manage your feelings and your emotions and so on. But it's a skill, and unless you are taught the skill and practice that skill in a safe environment, before you go out onto the public roads and the highways and so on, and you face the potholes, ditches, and all of that, other crazy drivers on the road, before all of that, you have to learn the skill and practice it. And so if you view it that way, then it's not something that we can just expect. It's not like you're born knowing how to handle conflict. It's not like you're born knowing how to cope efficiently with loss, with depression, with tabanka. You're not born knowing how to treat with those things. You have to learn the skill. And so what we have is we don't necessarily, where is a safe space in Trinidad and Tobago where we teach men how to cope with loss, how to cope with tabanka, how to cope with depression? Where do we teach them those skills? Where do they learn them?
Mm-hmm.
In a safe environment.
Mm-hmm. So in that sense, Sule, is there possibly a need for the re-socialization of men? Because if you said we're moving away from such stigmas or at least we're trying to move away from such, in allowing men to only be limited in what it is they're allowed to feel, is there a possible need for re-socializing and recalibrating, from a societal level as a whole?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. We need to start thinking about how we socialize our men. But that's a whole long conversation to have, because first we need to define what manhood is and what it's about, right? Because we've been going back and forth about that. What constitutes a man? What makes a man? So we need to reestablish and redefine that. We need to decide what are the boundaries and so on for that. What men ought to and should, what they should function like. What are the parameters? If a young boy says he is afraid of cockroaches, should he be allowed to be afraid of cockroaches and not be the one to throw them outside? Should he not be the one to go kill rats? Mm-hmm. Those are things as a society we have to have a discussion about. You have to look at what's occurring in the wider world. We have to look at the history of our society, and I think it has to be on a societal level and not necessarily on a global scale, because each society is influenced heavily by its own culture and practices. And so as a twin island, and perhaps even part of the region, the Caribbean region, I think that's the kind of conversation we need to have. What in the next 10 to 20 years, what do we want our men to look like, sound like, and how do we want them to function? And so based on that, we need to have a conversation and look at how we socialize our young men.
Now, that sounds like a very difficult conversation, because yes, I understand society, but men as well, this false sense of manhood or what it is to be a man, they themselves also have to work on that.
Well, yes, of course. As I said, when we talk about abuse, for example, when I look at abuses, when clients come into me and they're in abusive relationships, a lot of times we have these men who feel as though, who don't understand perhaps exactly what manhood is, or have a misconception of what manhood is. And for them, it's about physical dominance. And so physically they must then dominate their partner. And so it's a sense of power, so getting a sense of power. So manhood for them comes from feeling powerful, and feeling powerful is dominating this person. Alright? And that comes from a place of, to me, not necessarily understanding what, or having a poor conceptualization of what manhood should and ought to be. So unless we clarify that and teach men the skill of becoming of what manhood is and the skills to cope with manhood, then we're going to continue having persons coping poorly, maladaptive, or developing maladaptive coping mechanisms to issues like tobacco.
Certainly. Well, Sule, I want to thank you very much for joining me on the program this morning and for us to actually discuss quite a serious topic. And I hope that in future we could expand on such, whether it be on this platform or the platform to which you host. But thank you very much for your time nevertheless this morning.
Well, thanks very much, Keaton, for having me, Trinidad and Tobago. Be safe. Please look out for, I'll close by saying look out for any kind of violent tendencies or red flags, anything that you think is a red flag. We don't have time to go through all of that now, but reach out to someone if you think you're seeing red flags. For someone either who's not coping well or somebody who is acting out and being abusive or is not coping with grief and loss or tobacco well. Right? You can feel free to reach out to me on any social platform or any psychologist, anybody, a social worker, anybody, but talk to somebody. Alright? Let's save our society, Trinidad and Tobago.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Sule. Do have a good day. Keep well.
Thank you, Keaton. I'll see you on my program soon.
I wonder what he wants to talk about. Have a good one. Have a good one, Sule. Take care. Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break on the program.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Simon's Musical Supplies Limited. We are the specialist in new and used musical instruments, carrying top brands like Yamaha, Pearl River pianos, vinyl and Sabian cymbals, Remo and Evans drumheads and Fender guitars, just to name a few. Also a wide assortment of music books, pan and accessories. At Simon's, we service what we sell. Trust the leader. Call us now at 625-6412 or visit us at 20 Board Street, Port of Spain.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance He's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue. Well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best.
I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this is screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. And again, thank you for making the time to be with us this morning. My next conversation surrounds the Amplia Commission of Inquiry. Its final report is due on November 30th. We are hoping that is the case, but the Commission is to hold a final virtual hearing on November 29th from 2 p.m. This morning, I am joined by the widow of Rishi Nagasal, Councillor Vanessa Kusi. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
Hi, good morning to all listeners.
Thank you so much.
WESN, and I'm Vanessa Kusi, wife of Rishi Nagasal.
Well, thank you very much for joining me this morning on the program. It certainly is unfortunate circumstances of which we talk and of which we meet, of course. But, you know, this is an accident that occurred almost 2 years ago. We're reaching that date very soon. This report has been delayed 3 times. How has the families, as well as yourself, processed everything during this course, even with the news of it having been delayed?
First, I'd like to say that this tragedy had shocked the world, and as families, we are still not, we don't have closure, and we are hoping that when we get our final report, it's just really sad to say, but hoping that it is in favor of the divers and their family, and we want justice as well. And I wish that to add to that, whoever is held accountable is also responsible as well for the death of our loved ones.
Now that the date of November 30th is fast approaching, and that is supposed to be the final deadline in regards to the report.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Yes, in that sense as well. As I mentioned, yes, it's been very difficult to process, but it doesn't end there.
No, it does not. It does not end there. We still have to cope, as we are all single parents right now, and as a barrier, I wish that they had reached out to the family as well. They did not, as well as the government. They did not reach out to the families or send someone to see how our lives have been living since that tragedy. Our children are still going to school. All of our children, all the divers' children are still going to school. And it is very sad that I understand they're helping other people, like adopting other schools. I don't have any problem with that. But these men, they work for our country. And being, you know, the way that they were taken from us, we can never move on.
Do you think that your families, as well as those whose lives were lost, they've been forgotten due to this constant delay in the reports? Do you think that has been the case?
No, they are not forgotten. We the families are keeping it as alive as we can. We have candle vigil every month. And if I step out of my home, I can be pinpoint anywhere throughout the country. Anywhere I go, someone will come up to me and let me know, well, you know, that they saw me on either the news or the newspaper, or they remember me, you know. So I will not say it is, they are faded in any way or they are forgotten.
Mm-hmm. Are you saying that you are getting more support from those in society and those within the public than, as you mentioned, you haven't had any contact with Paria or anyone from the government?
No, neither. No, up to this day.
Mm-hmm. Also, how have the children of the families been in regards to dealing with the situation over the last 2 years? Again, I don't mean to sound crass or crude in any way. Life goes on for them.
It's a big struggle.
Because they're still in school.
It is a big struggle for us. And I can speak for myself right now. I know all the other families are same as struggling as myself, but I will speak for myself right now. It's been very hard to run a house, being a single parent, when you know your breadwinner were taken from you. They did not die, they didn't went to work to die in that way. They had plans like everyone else, and this tragedy happened. And when this tragedy happened, I was there present at Paria, and from the very beginning, they were not speaking the truth, starting from the security. I was first person there. And we have not been getting in contact with them. They did not came out and talk with us from the company, did like one-to-one. They did not speak with anybody. I begged any way I knew how to beg. I did beg them to come out, let us talk. They did not, however, speak with us.
And of course, as you said, nothing has changed. Throughout the commission...
No. As for my baby Nashik, he's still attending. He's going to school. He's going to preschool. And he needs everything you think about, as every child and parent would know how to prep their child to go to school. He needs every single thing. And being a single parent, it is a big struggle. Mm-hmm. It is a big struggle to deal with that. You have to pay school fees, you have to buy every single thing, like what you know as a parent your child will eat. You have to, and they are very picky. All toddlers are picky. So you know what your baby will need, you know what he wants, you know what he have to get for the week or the month, and you have to do what you can to do, to make all this happen. Our bills are still having to be paid. We cannot go and tell WASA or TNTech, well, I'm the wife of one of the divers, or I cannot go to the grocery and said I'm the one of the diver's wife as well. And we will be getting everything free. It's not working like that, right? At least the companies should have at least helped the families in some way or the other,
Are you expecting that, or rather, what are your expectations following this report being submitted on November 30th?
My expectations is I am expecting that the families do get justice, all the 5 of us get justice. The 4 families plus the lone survivor. And what I expect of this, I expect the people who are responsible is held accountable.
In your mind, you're saying justice. In your mind, in the context of this particular case, what is justice for you?
Justice for me is seeing whoever is responsible. I would like the government to do what they have to do.
Mm-hmm. Were you accepting of the reasons why this report was delayed on 3 occasions?
At first, I said when Mr. Lynch had asked for a couple months, a few months in fact, he had asked for a couple months. I was okay with it because I know it's a tragedy. It's the first time it's happened in our country, and it's a shock as well, and no efforts were being made to save the divers, and I know he had to, it will prolong as well. So we gave him his time, and then when more time has been asked, I was a little angry, and then it's like, it's like you're waiting for answers, and it's like the road is not going to end. It's a long journey. It's not going to end. And I also don't have any trust in the hands of the report it's been going to hand it to. And I wish that the families, the immediate families, get at least, we would like to have a report as well with us, to know exactly what is taking place. You cannot take a report and hand it over to who they are handing it to. And they have no feelings for us.
And therefore,
because I will put it in the simplest way, I don't even think they care for our children or the widows of the divers and our husbands. They were the one that put in money into their pockets. They were the one that making millions of dollars, right? Our husband was just getting daily paid. And when these men died, they were divers that were there to go save the divers, which they could have done. And they were stopped. They were stopped by the Coast Guard with guns. So they used force to save divers' lives. And I think this is very unjust. It is very inhuman. And I cannot accept that. And when my husband came out 7 days after, and I went to view him, my husband looked the same way he looked when he left my house, our home. He looked the same way. You know, he wasn't swollen in any way. He was just like, he was asleep. And this is something I have to live for the rest of my life. So we all know what had went on there. We all knew. And it's just part of reality that we have to live. And every time this commission of inquiry go back and they have to ask for more time, they are hurting us. They are reopening our wounds, which they do not know how affected we are. It really affects me.
Ms. Kusi,
I have to answer a lot of questions from my son, especially Nashik. Everything is Nashik always. He's so innocent. Up till now, he saw his father. We bury him. We do whole prayers. He sees I have photos of his dad all over my home, from upstairs, downstairs, kitchen, out by the road, on my hall. Anywhere you turn, you will see his father's foot. And he will talk to his father all the time, like if he's right there, if he's going to school, he's going to tell his father he's going to school. If he's eating something he likes, he would look at his dad and he will tell him, look, I'm getting bigger, and, I'm looking just like you. And this is things that would hurt me, and I would know how to, you would know how to express yourself, but you just leave him and let it be. Again, he's very innocent. And up till now, even if a gold van passed, he would let me know. He would say, look, and I would say, yes, Papa, it's not your daddy, it's someone else driving another vehicle, looks like your dad.
He understands, of course, what has happened, but it's been very difficult, of course, to tell him the circumstances of the events. I know that he's a child, and I'm truly sorry that this is... I'm truly sorry this is what's happening. Ms. Kusi, I really don't want to keep you back any longer, but I do want to thank you for making the time to be with us on the program this morning and for expressing...
We are just heard that, there are so much millions are spending on this commission of inquiry, and it's taxpayers' money, and a lot of people, when they see me, they will question, and they question with a question because I don't even have answers to answer the questions that a lot of people has been asking. We are in the same boat, and we do not know what is going to come out of this commission of inquiry. And we pray and hope that justice will be served to us, the 5 families, and that's the most I can say.
Well, thank you very much for your time this morning on the program, and thank you for being with us. Again, I know it's a very difficult conversation, and certainly there is a lot more to discuss, quite a lot more, but...
There is a lot more.
But
there's a lot more.
Let us await to see what takes place from November 30th. So thank you very much for your time this morning.
We all await. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Do have a good day. All the best to you.
Okay, same here.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break on the program.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays, 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
My name is Carl Media. I'm the founder and the host of Ever Increasing Voice Ministries. Join me every Saturday and Sunday on WESN, this powerful station, at 9 a.m. on Saturdays, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. nightly. Also on Sundays, I'll be on at 7 a.m., 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. at night time. When you come here, we are getting people heavenly ready.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
The newest book is here, Closer to the Church, the debut novel by author and former mayor Louis Lee Singh. Available at all the Home Store branches, Barataria, West Mall, Shogunas and C3 San Fernando. Paper-based bookshop 10 Nook Avenue St. Anne's, WESN 30A Gattaca Street Woodbrook, Metropolitan Bookshop Ariapita Avenue Woodbrook, and all RIK bookstores nationwide. Available online as paperback on Amazon.com and Kindle for e-readers. For more info, call 628-5835 or 389-6504. Also available from author Louis Lee Singh, I Used to Live in Heaven, Letters to My Granddaughters, and Local Government in Trinidad, Conspiracy Against the People.
Here is your WESN News on the Hour. I am Sarah Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Bamboo Settlement Number 2, $28,000 guard booth and barrier completed. 68-year-old Arima man robbed of cash by a lone bandit. And regionally, Jamaica and Mexico secure semi-final spots in the CONCACAF Nations League in tickets to 2024 Copa America. Now for the details. Inshan Ishmael, activist and businessman, has announced that the construction of the $28,000 guard booth and barrier in Bamboo Settlement Number 2 will be finalized tomorrow. Ishmael clarified that these security enhancements are not intended to restrict access, but rather to implement a card system. Visitors entering the area will receive a card stamped by the patronized business. However, those unwilling to adhere to the system will be required to have photographs taken along with their vehicle details to be maintained on record. Ishmael emphasized the urgency of implementing these security measures as Christmas approaches, expressing concerns about potential criminal attacks in the community. An early morning walk did not go as scheduled for a 68-year-old Arima man after he was robbed of cash by a lone bandit. Police said the man was walking along Kilwan Avenue to Puna Road around 6:15 a.m. on Wednesday when he saw a man in a hoodie walk past him. The suspect then attacked the elderly man from behind, pushing him to the ground and kicked him several times. The thief then dug into the man's pants pocket and stole $100 in cash and a bank card before running away. Arima CID are continuing investigations. Regionally, in an exhilarating series of matches, Jamaica and Mexico have both advanced to the semi-finals of the CONCACAF Nations League, securing their places in the 2024 Copa America in the process. El Tricolor claimed a decisive 2-0 victory over Honduras on Tuesday night, while Jamaica pulled off a dramatic come-from-behind 3-2 win to stun Canada. With their progression, Jamaica, Mexico, Panama, and the U.S., all of whom have qualified for the Copa America, will now vie for supremacy in the 2023-2024 CONCACAF Nations League finals to be held in Arlington, Texas. Well, that's it. News on the Hour on WESN. I am Sarah Ali. Thank you for watching.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Is it politics? What is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best.
I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the Content Capital.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I'm adopting a bit of a terminology this morning. Fun Friday, copyright, not copyright Keaton Shaw at all, it's copyright Andre Albertis. In fact, the fearless one is with us via Zoom. Hello, Andre, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Keaton, and thank all your viewers as well.
Andre, a lot has happened within the last couple of weeks in regards to sporting. If we focus on Trinidad and Tobago alone, TNT, last week they lost to the United States 3-0, but that doesn't do justice to a game. TNT were down to 10 men, still held the USA for 80 minutes, ended up losing 3-0, but then on Monday, turned that game into victory 2-1 against the USA. Trinidad and Tobago Red Force actually won for the 14th time the CG United Super 50 tournament. And there's a lot of news there actually in regards to West Indies selection, because Darren Bravo, what's going on there? And then we have the ICC World Cup, of which Australia stunned India in the final. But let's start where I started in regards to the football. Take us through what happened last week and what you would have seen taking place on Monday, the lessons learned and the changes made.
Certainly, thanks a lot, Keaton. Last week, Thursday, as you rightfully stated, at 10 o'clock Trinidad and Tobago time, they went into action against the USA in a game that many of us expected them to lose by a lot of goals, given the previous performances where they had lost by 6 goals, or 6 goals to nil, 6 goals to nil, and 7 goals to nil before that. However, Angus Eve adopted a more pragmatic role in a very defensive role, and Trinidad and Tobago absorbed a lot of the USA pressure. Unfortunately, in the 38th minute, a bad decision by the referee at the time, O'Shea Nation of Jamaica. Trinidad and Tobago went down to 10 men when he got a second yellow card after the first yellow card wasn't appropriate, everyone has said it since. But Trinidad and Tobago, Keaton, playing with 10 men, managed to hold the USA until the 82nd minute. That's when they escaped in, I think, mentally, physically as well. And they conceded 3 goals, the 82nd minute, the 86th minute, and then the 89th minute to finish and lose 3 goals to nil. It meant that they come back to Trinidad and Tobago, we needed to score 4 goals to advance to the semi-finals. However, we started not as we would like in terms of losing an early goal, but we had a more attacking team. We went down 1-0 after 25 minutes Monday, just on the 20th. However, it seemed as if the gods again decided that another team to play with 10 players, this time fully justified in Serginho Dest of USA, kicked the ball out of play. And we all know, Keaton, if you kick the ball out of play, and in his case, Keaton, he did it not like normally. He had to take the ball in his hand, Keaton, and kick it out of play. I mean, that is like unbelievable. No, that is just, you know you're going to get a yellow card. Nobody does that. Some people kick the ball out of play on the ground, but he take the ball in hand and kick it out of play. So, I mean, really, so the yellow card for certain. And then as if that wasn't bad enough, just about 45 seconds later, he continued ranting, and we understand, used very strong abusive language towards the referee, and he got a second yellow card and was sent off. And Trinidad and Tobago continued their aggression. They got 1 goal, they made it 1-1 in the second half. They got a thunderous free kick from Alvin Jones. The first goal by Ryan Moore, the second goal by Alvin Jones to make it 2-1. after 57 minutes. 2 minutes later, young Nathaniel James, a beautiful through ball from Sharon Gomez, one-on-one with the goalkeeper. It would have made it 3-1. And at that stage, Keaton, with 60 minutes gone, had Trinidad and Tobago scored that goal and made it 3-1, it would have meant that all Trinidad and Tobago would have needed over the next half an hour would have been 2 goals, and it would have been most interesting. However, they finished winning by 2-1, but losing the tie overall because it's based on aggregate score, and America had won the first game 3-0, so the America won 4-2. Trinidad and Tobago will play March 23rd in Dallas, Texas, a one-off knockout game. So if they win that game, they will qualify for Copa America, but they play against Canada, the strongest team in the last 4. Honduras play against Costa Rica. So it's not going to be easy, not impossible, because Canada themselves, they lost by 3-2 at home against Jamaica. So that should give Trinidad and Tobago some hope. And that's where it is right now. I think the important thing is that the Trinidad and Tobago team has enough time to prepare. And also, yesterday we did the interview with the TT Premier League. The Premier League in Trinidad and Tobago restarts today. So by next year, March, the players should be more match fit. We shouldn't have a problem with fitness come next year, March, when we have to play that match. That's a good news.
Also, I don't think, yes, you're right, Canada's the strongest team, and you're seeing a lot of superstars now, global stars coming from that team. But like Alphonso Davies, for example. But beyond that, the thing is, it's not going to be too difficult or too fearsome for TNT, based on what we saw last week, holding the USA for 82 minutes with 10 men, and even what we saw taking place on Monday. So I think it's a great improvement to what we've seen over the last couple of years.
Yes.
But let me ask you, in your opinion, do you think that the Gino Dest, his red card was impactful and influential on TNT's game?
Yes, I think in the end it was, only because psychologically it seemed to upset the whole American team. It just upset them. It's upset them much more. Think about this, Keaton, and you raised a good point there, Keaton. When Trinidad and Tobago lost no power in the 38th minute, it didn't seem to upset our game. We played good. But from their loss, they're playing the 38th minute, and from then on, they seem to just be lost. So I have to say it affected them a lot more than it affected Trinidad and Tobago. And Trinidad and Tobago team capitalized on this as best as they could. They could have done a lot better, but they did capitalize on it, because thereafter, Keaton, the American team had no shots on goal after their player was sent off. Not a single shot on goal. In fact, it was so bad, I think Craig Valletta, their manager, he decided to take off their strongest player, Giovanni Reina. He took off their strongest player and brought on another right back, which suggests to me, Keaton, that he was okay with a draw or winning 1-0. He didn't want to take any chances, which would mean that he was concerned about Trinidad and Tobago.
Certainly. Also, in regards to the final moments of play, the last 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, which is crucial to any football game, is that one of our areas that we certainly need to work on? I understand mentally, psychologically, even in terms of fatigue, it kicks in, but is that one of our weak points?
Yes, we have seen that in nearly all the matches Trinidad and Tobago played, except one where they came from behind and they won in the last 2 or 5 minutes. But they generally seem to just, I think tiredness affects them. Obviously, we all know when they get tired, it's not easy to function. And I think because when they get tired, you normally get tired when your body relaxes. And you know there's 10 minutes left, your body relaxes a little bit more automatically, particularly in a competitive game. And that's an area, hopefully, that now that they're going to be starting the league and they're going to be accustomed to playing games of 90 minutes and more, they will, by force, have to regain that sort of fitness. So let's hope it works. And it has to work, because you're going to be playing in a competitive league starting today.
Now, we've seen, again, this is a team effort. It's Alvin Jones, it's his right foot, it's Thunder's right foot. Again, excellent what we're seeing from the entire team. But what does this speak of Angus Eve's coaching, especially over the last couple of years? From that shouting we got from the USA about 3 years ago, I think it was 7-0 if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and Terry Fenwick was the coach then.
Yes, Terry Fenwick was the coach then, but then Angus Eve coming in, and this TNT team, you're getting results you're not expecting.
You know, 100% right. I think Angus Eve has had a tough time as the coach. We were one of those that supported him. and he has managed to survive. He's got more victories than many other coaches in the past, and he's been able to turn the team around in difficult circumstances, Keaton. Some players leaving, some players complaining. He's brought in some young players, and what he has shown us, particularly over these 2 legs, is that he's able to adapt. He can't put together a defensive team to defend. He can't put together an attacking team to win. We've seen it happen when Trinidad and Tobago played in El Salvador. We had never won a competitive game in El Salvador before. And we went to El Salvador, went goal down, managed to come back and win 3-2. Guatemala came to Hazley Crawford Stadium, Keaton. They went 2 goals up against Trinidad and Tobago, and we came back and won 3-2. Ander's record this year, in 7 matches played in Trinidad and Tobago, 6 wins, 1 draw. So he's making the Hazley Crawford Stadium a fortress, which, as you know, so for someone who follows football, when you make your home venue a fortress, and it helps when you get plenty fans, it encourages and gives the team inspiration and makes your opponents know how difficult it will be. And if we can continue to build that, it augurs well, because from next year, the World Cup draw will be made next year, and it's going to be interesting.
Certainly interesting indeed. Well, we look also forward to next March when TNT takes on Canada. Moving forward now with some other big news in regards to TNT's 14th Super 50 title. The biggest news coming out of the tournament is Darren Bravo. He led the team and he was the highest run scorer, an average of 82 if I'm not mistaken. But quite incredible in terms of all that he has been through and all that's taken place with his career, how he's led this team out.
Yes. Last year, he led the team until the finals, unfortunately, and Trinidad and Tobago lost the finals then, when Nicholas Puran was involved.
Well, that's the thing. So, sorry, Andre, you were saying?
Yeah, I was saying that last year, he led the team with Nicholas Puran. When Nicholas Puran came into the side, he gave it up. And, of course, since then, he is just continues his success.
Do you think that it's, though, given what we've seen from Darren Bravo in this tournament, that he was not selected by the West Indies? In fact, do you agree with the justification in regards to his age?
I think it's absolute rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Let me tell you why. The fact of the matter is he's 34 years old. Desmond Haynes stated that the reason he was not selected was because of the simple fact that he will be 37 in 2027. But Keaton, we all know that to qualify for the 2027 tournament, there are qualifying matches which start next year. The West Indies didn't even qualify. We have to go to a qualifier. So you are telling me your best player, you don't want him because in 2027, when you haven't even qualified yet. If you tell me you qualify, yes. But don't you need to get enough points to qualify first? That's one thing. So he's talking rubbish there, talking to both sides of his mouth and talking rubbish. And then the other point is, he's saying that Darren Bravo is 34 years old, I won't pick him. But you pick a 33-year-old, and you pick a 32-year-old as well. Yeah. You pick 2 32-year-olds. Out of those 2 32-year-olds, they are from Barbados, which is the same country he is from. They played in the Super 50 tournament. When you add up their respective scores together, total 475, more than Darren Bravo, but that's together, right? Each of them scored just about 200 runs. Bravo scored, as you said, 416 runs.
Yeah.
But you pick these 2 players, one of them is a wicket-keeper, and you say you pick him not for wicket-keeping, but for batting because he's good to bat in the middle. Well, that makes sense. Other than the fact that he's a Barbadian, and he's 32 years old. Bravo is 34 years old. He'll be 35. He will be 35 by next World Cup, right?
Yeah, that's the thing, Andre. Darren Bravo, his tournament runs and his score, his average is actually the second best in the team after said wicketkeeper. He actually has the second best stats compared to any other player in the West Indies team.
Yeah, and he would probably have had better, but he's had such a truncated run since he left the game. When he was put out by West Indies cricket, he had the best average was in the 40s in terms of Test cricket, and the 30-something or 35 in terms of one-day cricket. But of course, he's been coming in and going out so much of the team, not consistently because of the selectors. But to give that excuse is purely an excuse. And you know the good thing about this, Keaton, when you hear Barbadians commentators and Barbadian people questioning Desmond Haynes, you know something is wrong. Cricket West Indies themselves are concerned, but for the time being, they can't do anything, it appears, because his contract, the Desmond Haynes contract, runs out next year, July. but I don't see him lasting longer than that.
That's most interesting. Wow. And it only adds fuel to the fire in regards to this continued rivalry and feud, of course, between Barbados and Trinidad in regards to West Indies cricket. So let's see. I wish the team the best. Still am a man for the Maroon, but let's see what happens. Let's see what takes place then. Sunil Narine, it was really his final tournament for Trinidad and Tobago. He's signaled his retirement. Is he a major loss to TNT's Red Force team and TNT cricket?
He is. Because, I mean, let's face it, when you look at him in that final, he was unplayable. And when you talk to Darren Bravo, if Trinidad and Tobago ever in a little bit of trouble, he will come on and he encourages the other bowler. And he's such a modest guy. But West Indies cricket, Darren Bravo has been treated badly. He has been treated badly. It's just a thing. It just seems to be, and we're not picking on anything on insularity, but the reality is that Trinidad and Tobago players, when it comes particularly to the white ball game, have been treated poorly because we have the best players. We all know, Keaton, that if they didn't have this franchise and it was the Trinidad and Tobago team playing against Barbados, Jamaica, we win in all these tournaments. There's no doubt, obviously, right? But of course, there is the CPL, so they have franchise, so we do win as much as possible, obviously. But if you're pound for pound, the best players in terms of that T20 cricket and even one-day cricket is from Trinidad and Tobago. You know, you can imagine how much titles we would have won as Trinidad and Tobago with Narine and the Bravos, Evan Lewis, Lendell Simmons.
Well, we were doing it, sir. We were doing it. We were doing it. Yeah.
And they stopped because they put it, because if they didn't do this, Trinidad and Tobago win all the titles, they have no doubt. Yeah. Nobody can beat the Trinidad and Tobago team. Imagine you have men like Ray Emrit on the bench. They just to call a name. Samuel Badre was wrong at that time. How anybody could beat Trinidad and Tobago? Nicolas Puranan and them have come up recently. Karaya, Akil Hussain, they have all come to the ranks. Nobody beaten Trinidad and Tobago. Evan Lewis. Nobody. Keon Webster. I mean, you could go through the whole list of names. Now they have Young Utley. So Trinidad and Tobago winning everything. Yeah, so they broke it up, and so we don't win as much as we used to win, but we still have the best players. That's when it comes to white ball cricket. And now the West Indies have selected a 15-man squad to play against England with 2 Trinidad and Tobago players alone. And we just won, as you said, convincingly. We were unbeaten. Right? We were unbeaten in the Super 50. But you name only 2 Trinidad and Tobago players on the team. All right?
I find that incredible, Andrea. I know it's in a good sense at all. I cannot wrap my head around it at all. But if we're speaking about players that are taking over, one of the individuals that was selected, one of the 2 TNT, was Yannick Correa. What are your thoughts on his selection?
No, I think that's a justifiable selection. He got 18 wickets. He's a leg spinner. He is proven dangerous. He has been on the West Indies team before. And he's a good fieldsman. He's a good batsman too as well. He bats in the middle. He bats at number 6 for Trinidad and Tobago. He had 2 half centuries. So it is a good selection. And he's a good player. But he is one of those players that have come up. He has gotten ahead of some players, and you might ask yourself how he's got ahead. But he has gotten ahead, and the selectors have liked him. So, and he has done well when he played for Trinidad and Tobago. And he's done well when he played for the West Indies in the limited matches. So you can't really argue with his selection, in my opinion.
Excellent. Well, again, I'm still a man for the Maroons, so let's see what takes place. But yeah, absolutely, I have 100% agree with in regards to West Indies selection. And Desmond Haynes next year, July. I'll be very surprised if he's still there. But anyway, last but certainly not least, were you able to catch that final on Sunday? Were you able to wake up in time to see it?
Yeah, I didn't wake up at the initial start. I would have got up just about maybe, I don't get up as early as you, so I would have got up just about maybe 5:30, like that. And that day, there's no English Premier League that week, so I was taking a little bit relaxing. And I honestly thought that, I wanted India to win. I'll be honest. I didn't want Australia to win. I just don't like Australia. I have to be honest and be honest as it is. I find it arrogant. But nevertheless, they played a good game, but I thought India played into their hands, Keaton. I thought India were too cautious. After Rohit Sharma got out, it was as if all the aggression just drained out of India. Because when Rohit Sharma was batting, I would say, right, 350, 375, this game done. But he was dismissed, and even Kohli, and then I got out, and then Rahul came in, and they were so defensive. And I was wondering, why are they so... It was almost to me as if they were so afraid to lose, Keaton, in front of that crowd. And sometimes that works against you.
And that's an interesting approach that you've said, because we've heard from other Indian commentators and Indian legends who have suggested, I think including Rahul Dravid, who've said, listen, it's really kudos to Australia because Australia did well from the toss. They won the toss and they looked at the fielding conditions, and Australia were the ones who really, got it at the end of the day. You've taken a completely different approach.
I don't think they will never say that they bottled. They wouldn't want to say that. But when you look at it, given the talent that they have, Keaton, there's no way India should be making 240 runs. That's not enough. India should be making a lot more than that, given the talent that they have. And that's why I'm going to say that yes, Australia bowled well, nobody's denying that. But India has too much talent. Look at how Kohli got dismissed. I'm sure you watch how Kohli got dismissed.
Yeah.
Kohli, it wasn't a great ball. It was a short ball, and Kohli played that ball back onto his stumps. So here's the situation where I'm thinking that Kohli was nervous. Kohli would not do that, play a ball back on. Why is Kohli so defensive? Why does he pull the ball? There was a period, I'm almost sure I'm right, where when there were 15 or 20 overs, and they actually said India had not scored a boundary.
Yes, for an hour of play, India had not scored a boundary.
Okay, India who played T20 cricket so well in difficult circumstances all over the world. You telling me they can't score a boundary? Australia's so good? Come on, something happened to India. I think when they lost Sharma and then they lost those 2 quick wickets, all of a sudden they went on the back foot. They decided not to take any chances again, and that's it. The game completely went away from them.
The thing is, I'll be honest with you, Andrew, I didn't want Australia to win. I didn't want India to win either, not because I don't like the Indian team. Sure. I'm frustrated with BCCI,
Yeah. So in the end, I don't like the BCCI either, but when I look at the 2 teams in the finals, I have to go for India, obviously. When I look at the finals, because I don't like Australia. I would have liked South Africa or New Zealand to win for the first time. It would have been good for either of them. Unfortunately, both of them didn't deliver.
Well, I honestly had my hopes of New Zealand, to be honest with you. But disappointing team of the tournament does not go to Sri Lanka, does not go to Bangladesh. It goes to England.
Unbelievable. England, I think, when you look at the other teams, Afghanistan and their progress, I'm told the English will. That's why when they come to the Caribbean, they'll be coming annoyed, angry, wanting to change how things have gone for them. So I'm certain they're going to be coming here determined to beat up on the West Indies. And when the West Indies pick a weak side, they're going to get licks. They are going to get, because England is a hurt animal, Keaton. So they're coming here hurt. And they're brought in some new players who will want to impress. And so they're going to come here chomping at the bit, looking to resurrect their fortunes. They don't want to go back home losing a series against the West Indies, who did not qualify for the World Cup. That's not going to do them any good at all. So they're going to come here all guns blazing, and we have not picked our best team. That's so terrible for us personally.
Imagine that. Imagine that. We have not picked our best team. You mentioned Afghanistan. Another team I'd like to add to that is Netherlands as well. For some outstanding plays during the tournament.
I think when they defeated the West Indies with that terrible last over by Jason Holder, people said, okay, yeah. But they have proved that they are now a force. They are now a force. And you know what? I remember us playing a lot of games against Netherlands, and we said, yeah, why West Indies playing against Netherlands? But they were using us to build their confidence and build their team.
Yeah.
That's what they do. And now, we know Netherlands are in football. If they put that together in cricket, they're going to be a force as well.
Boy, certainly. In your opinion, player of the tournament, if you can name one player who really stood out to you in the ICC Men's World Cup. There were so many,
Only because of his heroics, Glenn Maxwell. When he won that game against Afghanistan, he changed the whole mentality of teams playing against Australia. In other words, and I think that affected India too.
Yeah.
Because they came back from a losing situation and they won. They did the same thing against South Africa. They reduced South Africa to a limited score, and they struggled in the battle, but they found a way to win. It was always as if, Australia is going to win, because they have just got players that are going to find a way to win. And I think that is what but I want to also say that the captain, Pat Cummins showed me that he's a very good captain in terms of tactics. Obviously, they work behind the scenes and they address their problems. But there was always an Australian player, Keaton. And that's why sometimes we don't like Australia. Because Australia found a way to win, like almost like how the West Indies used to win in the past. No matter how much you can get Greenwich, Haynes, and Richards out, Gomes and Lloyd, they go find a way. Or Logie, or Dujon. Somebody will come and find a way to win.
Yeah.
And Australia have that in them.
Happened with Glenn Maxwell. It happened with Travis Head. And then, of course, Pat Cummins has certainly proven himself as Australia captain. I mean, even in the Ashes series. And
remember, they also won the Test Championship. So what a year it has been for him as a captain. They've won all the 3 titles available. The Test Championships, they beat India. They won the Test Championships. Now they've come and won this again against India. And also, as you mentioned, obviously, they've gone on and won the Ashes. So it's been a great year. They say he's now rated among the best Australian captains because of these victories.
So the only thing left for him to achieve now is the T20 World Cup, which I think is next year, isn't it?
In the Caribbean.
Yeah, in the Caribbean. Anyway, Andre, it's been a pleasure, man. Thanks so much for joining me this morning, and thanks for sharing your thoughts with us of what's taking place.
And I wish you good luck with Ryan Gomez's book. That's what I will. I leave you with that note. I'll see him later with Sean Michael Small. But I wish you good luck.
There's not enough holy water in the world to deal with that.
Oh, and you know he's a holy man, eh? He's a holy man, so ask him for the holy water. All right. Thanks a lot. Take care and keep up the great work.
Thanks,
nice
Andre. Have a good one. Take care. I think out of everything that Andre Batiste mentioned this morning is yes, the West Indies selectors and the selection of the West Indies squad to face England. Very crucial point. Angus Eve coaching an extremely important point as well, as we see the improvements made by the team. But I think the most important of all is how to deal with Ryan Gomez-Burke. Ryan Gomez-Burke is a very close friend of ours who is also the director of our programs, and boy, oh boy, I never had grey hair until I met Ryan Gomez-Burke, you know. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me this morning on AM Prime. It certainly has been a pleasure, and I'm wishing you a grand day ahead, a positive, peaceful, productive one, and may we all be safe and may we be well. But until the next edition of AM Prime, have a good one. I'm Keaton Shaw. This has been WESN Content Capital, the premier platform for Caribbean content, and we'll see you again very soon.
WESN.
For 60 years, television has shown us hundreds of stories. About our country, our people, and our culture.
Let's welcome
Baby
Lord!
Happy World Television Day from the Office of the Prime Minister, Communications.
I'm Andre L. Batiste, and you're watching WESN, the Content Capital.
Young at heart, purpose-driven, patriot even. When you like to party, but are still passionate about discussing important issues, the only place where your needs will be met is WESN Content Capital.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
To Ireland now, and Ireland's police chief says 34 people have been arrested after a riot in Dublin on Thursday. The riot followed an earlier knife attack in the city centre, which left 4 people injured, including a 5-year-old girl who's in an emergency care ward in hospital. The police said the riot was driven by far-right ideology. Officers say they're not looking for anyone other than the man involved in the incident and that they are keeping an open mind about any motive. Here's more.
Scenes of chaos in Dublin city centre, following a knife attack outside a school that left several people injured hours earlier. Anti-immigrant protesters clashed with police, setting vehicles ablaze and looting one of the city's main shopping streets. Some carried signs reading Irish Lives Matter and waved Irish flags through an area home to a large immigrant community. After deploying some 400 officers, the head of the Irish police condemned the violence.
We have a complete lunatic hooligan faction driven by far-right ideology and also then this disruptive tendency here and engaged then in serious violence. Now, we are drafting in resources to deal with that. I've made it very clear and given full direction to our resources here in DMR in respect of making arrests and bringing offenders to justice.
Harris also warned against misinformation as rumours spread on social media about the suspected attacker's nationality. Police say calm was restored by late evening, with no serious injuries reported. The disorder, the worst to hit Dublin in years, was centred on several streets in the city centre, including O'Connell Street, not far from the scene of the earlier knife attack. Among those injured were 3 children.
I looked across the road and I seen a man in a stabbing motion where a load of children. It was horrendous, and the children screaming and the women screaming. and it was chaotic. It was absolutely chaotic. The poor children coming out of school, they couldn't have been more than 6 years of age.
A 5-year-old girl and a woman in her 30s were taken to hospital after sustaining serious injuries. A man in his 50s, also said to be seriously injured, was arrested. Police say they are not looking for any other suspect and have not ruled out any motive behind the stabbing incident.
And that from Charlotte Hughes. To China now, where paediatric hospitals in the north of the country are reporting an overwhelming number of pneumonia-like illnesses. After being pressed for information by the World Health Organization, Beijing said that no unusual or novel pathogens have been detected. They attribute the surge instead to the lifting of COVID measures. This from Emerald Maxwell.
Hospitals in Beijing flooded with parents and kids awaiting checkups, as China sees clusters of pneumonia spreading in the north of the country, affecting mostly children. Enough to raise concerns at the World Health Organization, which requested data from the Chinese health authorities. On Thursday, they got an answer.
Chinese authorities advise that there has been no detection of any unusual or novel pathogens or unusual clinical presentations. They further stated that the rise in respiratory illness has not resulted in patient loads exceeding hospital capacities.
The spike in cases comes as China braces for its first full winter since lifting its strict COVID restrictions last December. An increase similar to what many other countries saw after easing their pandemic measures. Authorities attribute the outbreaks to the circulation of known pathogens, such as influenza, the virus that causes COVID-19, and Mycoplasma pneumoniae, a common bacterial infection which typically affects younger children.
Children's immune systems are not well developed. Their specific and non-specific immunity functions are not very mature, which may easily lead to infections.
The World Health Organization said it remained in close contact with authorities in China to monitor the situation. Next month marks 4 years since the first cases of COVID-19 were reported in Wuhan. Over the course of the ensuing pandemic, the WHO repeatedly criticized Chinese authorities for their lack of transparency and cooperation.
And that's it for now. Do stay tuned. There's plenty more here on France 24.
What were your first impressions when you got to Paris?
It was really impressive. The setting, the atmosphere, the smells, even the lights were different. It was really just so wonderful. I got a great welcome. I had a great stay and I really don't regret going. I absolutely loved my time in Paris. Ouais.
Togolese model Alex Seff is walking in Paris on the occasion of the first ever foreign edition of FIMO, that is Togo's International Fashion Festival, which celebrated its 10th birthday in Lomé in the spring.
Jacques, where did you get the idea to relocate FIMO to Paris?
We thought after 10 years of FIMO that it was time to send Togolese fashion, African fashion, out into all the capital cities of the world, starting with Paris.
You're also a designer. What are the biggest challenges that African designers face?
I'd like to launch an appeal to everyone who loves fashion living in Africa to start by wearing clothes made in Africa. I'm not telling them not to wear luxury brands, but at the same time they also need to encourage African designers. We're trying to change African fashion, especially in Francophone Africa. Mentalities need to evolve. People need to start by wearing clothes designed and made on the continent, so that designers are able to make a decent living from their work.
And Made in Africa is a concept that comprises clothes made not only on African soil, but also in the African diaspora.
Where did this passion for madras begin?
I realized that Madras was hardly known, despite being a wonderful representation of Caribbean culture. But it's also not just Caribbean culture. It's got a wonderfully rich history that's been nourished by travels, by colonization. Madras is a part of India, and Indian migrants to the Caribbean brought that culture with them, where it was reinterpreted, and now it really does travel all over the place. This is a Madras patchwork, which is pretty important to me because it's comprised of all these different pieces with this beautiful cotton and all of these combined threads, which is very characteristic. And for me, they also represent cultural threads. This collection is about the links between the Caribbean, India, and Paris.
Le wax, so wax fabrics aren't on the way out?
No, absolutely not. I can safely say that we're still wearing wax prints in Ivory Coast. But today, we've decided to promote woven African pani, or wrappers, namely Ivorian pani. And the work that these fabric producers come up with is really remarkable. So it was important for me to reference these artisans from Western Ivory Coast to promote woven Ivorian pani.
What are you presenting today?
The collection is called What Color Are Your Cats at Night? So it's a collection based on different shades of gray. There you go.
Because at night all cats look grey.
That's what you might think, but not always. In any case, there will be a lot of gray cats, but there will also be a fair few cats of some other colors, although not loads.
A collection on the theme of masculinity and femininity?
Yes, masculinity, femininity, but also freedom. The freedom simply to be, and the freedom to be able to say what we want through the clothes we wear. The freedom to walk with your head held high, to accept yourself, and maybe even the freedom to have a message, or to make people accept you, or at least start to accept you.
What does fashion mean for you?
For me, fashion is a means of expression. I don't know if you can see, but I have albinism. It's not always been easy for me here because I'm African, but I've got white skin. So for years, I really struggled to be myself, with how to identify. And fashion helped me to accept myself. Fashion can help us feel worthy. I've worked for different designers. Having that access to fashion, that really built up my confidence. They accepted me as I am. Often when I was doing ad campaigns or photo shoots where I was having my makeup and hair done, well, sometimes when I saw what they'd done to me, I didn't even recognize myself. And it's then that I started to accept myself, to actually find myself beautiful. That really helped me. And that's why I say that we, along with designers and stylists, really have a very important message to share. Young people are really my priority, really empowering them. It's about expressing ourselves, whether the message be one of happiness or sadness, because that's what my clothes express. And you know, most of my designs I came up with when I was unhappy. And it's true that instead of seeking remedy in drugs or cigarettes, things like that, well, I prefer to create. That's it. I create.
A recent UNESCO report says that Africa is on course to be the world's next major fashion hub, on the condition that the industry receives sufficient state support, a condition that's by no means guaranteed.
Extending over 9,000 square kilometers, Aveyron is one of France's largest départements. With its limestone plateaus and vertiginous gorges, the area is full of contrasts, just like its iconic cheese, Roquefort. The blue vein ewe's milk cheese, one of the oldest and most famous in the world, was born in this region. It inspired 4 friends from Aveyron to hop on their bikes for a day trip to set off on the trail of this king of cheeses.
It's not so warm today, but this is still a treat. The scenery is magnificent, and we're enjoying the fresh Aveyron air, so it's all good.
They're pedaling around a 60-kilometer loop called Bicyclette. The first stage takes them to Alice's farm.
Hello.
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 Hello. Welcome to Airlink. You're on a family farm where we produce the sheep's milk used to make Roquefort cheese.
Now 75, Alice has spent a good part of her life with her animals.
These ewe lambs were born in January, so you can see what they're like. Yes, they're very cuddly. They bite too.
Every week, Alice welcomes cycle tourists for her ewes to charm.
Oh, they're so cute. I love having guests, yes. It's a chance to promote our profession. People come here to find out a little more, and we're happy to tell them. Look at this one, she's biting my hair. They like to be stroked.
These Lacombe ewes are milked twice a day.
We can press on.
How many ewes do you currently milk?
With this system, we can milk 40 ewes at a time. The pump here delivers the milk automatically to the milk tank.
Alice describes each stage of the milking process to her sometimes incredulous tourists.
They say, goodness, it's a veritable laboratory. So I say, did you think we wore hats and clogs? No, we've evolved.
Bye-bye, thank you.
Bye, Alice.
Thanks, Alice.
But to earn a taste of the sheep's milk cheese,
So where's Roquefort?
To the northwest.
our cyclists have some work to do. Next up is Le Combalou, and at the foot of this massif lies the village of Roquefort. This is where the 7 producers of this legendary cheese have been based for hundreds of years. In the third-floor basement of this 1,000-year-old cellar, a master cheesemaker watches over 6,000 maturing Roquefort, whose every secret he knows, even the most ancient.
The Roquefort legend tells the story of a famous shepherd who abandoned his cheese and bread in a cellar to run after a shepherdess, returning to find his bread mouldy and his cheese covered in fungus.
Legend or not, this is the mold that makes Roquefort famous. Penicillium roqueforti, the fungus that gives the cheese its famous blue color.
Now I'm observing the development of penicillium inside the cheese to check it's all the way through and developing evenly.
And is it?
Definitely. Then, of course, there's the odour. The sheepfold smell of sheep's milk.
To keep the cheeses moist and fresh, nature has produced the perfect environment. The huge cliff overlooking the village acts as a natural air conditioner. A vast network of underground tunnels links it to the cellars.
The air rushes into the cliff, moves through a network of faults, taking on moisture and cooling on contact with the rock, so it arrives in our cellars cool and damp.
We rejoin our cyclo-tourists for a look around another Roquefort cellar.
So here we are in Gabriel Coulet's oldest cellar. Please stand over there.
After 3 weeks of maturation, the process needs to be slowed down with tinfoil.
To keep the Roquefort from the air, we now have to wrap it.
Come on, let's all give a hand.
Don't crease it too much. No, you're doing it wrong.
Oh, wrong?
Yes. The thing about tin foil is that it's malleable. So if you don't overdo it, you can gain a few millimeters. Once you've teased it up, you can fold it over the top.
So should we taste this Roquefort? We have 3 of them, all different, nothing like each other. Some mild, some with more character.
Our day trippers now see their département in a new light. Because Aveyron has at least as many faces as Roquefort has different flavors.
Hi, I'm Anthony Mills, Vienna correspondent for France 24. There's more to Austria than mountains, lakes and coffee houses, as wonderful as they are.
Vienna is a seat of the United Nations and hosts international organisations, so there's plenty of high-profile diplomacy to cover. And every now and then, Austrian national politics goes global.
Anthony Mills, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world. With mass layoffs and the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank,
the biggest bank collapse since the 2008 financial crisis, and it shut down today.
The startup kingdom has become a nightmare for some.
And within those 60 days, you need to find a job or get deported out of the country.
I work, I have a job, I pay taxes. So it's not like I'm a bum, you know what I mean?
But can the El Dorado of new technology recover?
People are afraid of where they're putting their money, but now is actually the time to get in because people are losing their jobs. I think this is just a natural ebb and flow.
Silicon Valley Revisited on France 24 and France24.com.
WESN.
Here is your WESN News on the Hour. I am Sira Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Bamboo Settlement Number 2, $28,000 guard booth and barrier completed. 68-year-old Arima man robbed of cash by a lone bandit. And regionally, Jamaica and Mexico secure semi-final spots in the CONCACAF Nations League in tickets to 2024 Copa America. Now for the details. Inshan Ishmael, activist and businessman, has announced that the construction of the $28,000 guard booth and barrier in Bamboo Settlement Number 2 will be finalized tomorrow. Ishmael clarified that these security enhancements are not intended to restrict access, but rather to implement a card system. Visitors entering the area will receive a card stamped by the patronized business. However, Those unwilling to adhere to the system will be required to have photographs taken along with their vehicle details to be maintained on record. Ishmael emphasized the urgency of implementing these security measures as Christmas approaches, expressing concerns about potential criminal attacks in the community. An early morning walk did not go as scheduled for a 68-year-old Arima man after he was robbed of cash by a lone bandit. Police said the man was walking along Kilwan Avenue to Puna Road around 6:15 a.m. on Wednesday when he saw a man in a hoodie walk past him. The suspect then attacked the elderly man from behind, pushing him to the ground and kicked him several times. The thief then dug into the man's pants pocket and stole $100 in cash and a bank card before running away. Arima CID are continuing investigations. Regionally, in an exhilarating series of matches, Jamaica and Mexico have both advanced to the semi-finals of the CONCACAF Nations League, securing their places in the 2024 Copa America in the process. El Tricolor claimed a decisive 2-0 victory over Honduras on Tuesday night, while Jamaica pulled off a dramatic come-from-behind 3-2 win to stun Canada. With their progression, Jamaica, Mexico, Panama, and the U.S., all of whom have qualified for the Copa America, will now vie for supremacy in the 2023-2024 CONCACAF Nations League finals to be held in Arlington, Texas. Well, that's it. News on the Hour on WESN. I am Sarah Ali. Thank you for watching.
WESN.
Good day, folks. Welcome, value viewers. This is Talking Point here on WESN, your content capital. Sean Michael Small here once again before you without my co-host. And unfortunately, he was scheduled to appear today, but business has pulled him away from us, folks. However, do not despair. We do have two of my colleagues joining me. One who many viewers might be accustomed to here on Fridays, but one who, well, you might be accustomed to him on Fridays, but he should be a surprise nevertheless. However, that will be later in the show to speak on an issue that might be slightly going under the radar, or at least the perspective or the prompt from which we shall speak from. However, there are other things going on in the country, so let's kick off today's Daily Review. And those who've been watching the show for probably in the last year, maybe a bit longer, would know that I have been concerned about the education system for various reasons. We've spoken about EFCL, we've tried to get in contact with the former heads of that entity, which, as far as we're aware, more or less is wound up to some degree, and the responsibilities transferred because the work that it was doing didn't necessarily end, just the situation was no longer tenable. And then, of course, we had Judith de Vertile, from Paiho Early Childhood Education Center, and, Paiho Education Center. And she was speaking about her concerns about the curriculum and the fact that we have a one-size-fits-all policy and not enough is being done to cater to the individual needs of students who might not be necessarily engaged by how our education system is designed in its linear structure and its very, limited model. But then, Of course, most of you would be aware about school indiscipline. And the issue of school indiscipline is one that we have to ask, is it necessarily all on the schools not doing their job to keep the students disciplined, to train them in order to become functioning members of society eventually? Or are there external factors that's adding additional pressure onto the students and the schools just can't keep up? And one of the last times we spoke about some of the issues with the education system with regards to school discipline, we pointed to a case where a student was suspended 20 times. And the Minister of Education said, well, there's a system, there's guidelines for these sorts of things. And we questioned if the minister knew the guidelines, and a caller said, well, it's on the website, she probably does know. However, the guidelines could not account for 20 suspensions. I'm pretty sure the guidelines, you know, it's far less than 20 suspensions before we reach the point of expulsion. And there was a student that was expelled that we were also speaking about at around that time. And the questions about that student more or less being lost to the ether because they no longer had access to our education system. That is to say, government schools or government-assisted schools, which most of the people in the country, I do not think could afford a private secondary school. I did not go to a private secondary school. I went to a government-assisted school. You know, to some extent, we still had to participate in things like fundraising and the like. Now, the education minister, she had a press conference yesterday. The main thing that I am interested in is when the education minister said that those who are expelled, and given the fact that there is a student that was suspended 20 times, so in some cases, the ministry or the schools themselves rather, and I think this was included in the minister's comments and in the report of those comments, they don't necessarily want to expel students. The problem is there will be some students where everything short of expulsion doesn't seem to work. To what extent do you justify keeping the disruptive element in class? And given the state of school violence and our crime situation, at some point there will be students, not all students that are expelled are a threat. But it's not to say that it can't happen. So for various reasons, not just for the individual student, but for those around them, you might have to reach that last resort of expulsion. Is it a failure of the ministry when it gets to that point? Or, like I said, are there external factors? We mentioned parenting off and on the last couple of weeks, right? The police commissioner pointed at it, which to some extent is true. Whether or not you like her saying it, that's debatable. But in order to ensure that expelled students don't fall through the cracks, the ministry is saying, look, we will enroll them into MILAT. We'll make it mandatory. MILAT is the military-led academic training program. And it's almost a cliche in fiction where you have a problem student, you sell them to military school. And to be fair, sometimes that could work. The heightened level of discipline and structure, depending on how it is run still, because even children will see through any sort of dishonesty, any sort of bad faith acting, any sort of disingenuousness. So you have to be sincere, but combined with a strict regime which could break the student out of whatever habits, lifestyle, daily cycled environments even that encourages or promotes within themselves negative behavior that is a detriment to themselves and to the people around them. Okay, these things are good, potentially. But that's why I said what I said. I think it's also a cliche to have these sorts of institutions, whether it's a youth detention facility, a military school facility, a boarding school facility, a youth program for at-risk youth. There's a cliche where you will have, you know, the Hollywood lead, male lead, female lead, to kind of do all sorts of dramatic things to reach out the student to actually get their attention. But then there's also the fact that, look, there's the cliche of the bad leaders who might be running these programs. Are our programs good? Other ones have been questionable, maybe not MILAT. But my real concern is, if it reached this point where they're mid to late teens, well, really mid-teens, because mandatory education goes up to the age of 16, so they can't really force students to engage in MILAT because they were expelled past that age. So really mid-teens, mid-teenagers who, yes, they're not adults, they're not fully grown yet, there's still a lot they don't know. But at the same point in time, their personality is starting to come entrenched. Their experiences, their emotions, there's a lot there that will be difficult to reverse, unlike younger children. And this goes back to what I said about PIHO and the structure that young children start off with. I do wonder if this is a band-aid. I understand why the minister is doing this, and out of context, it's not bad. And it probably should be something that should be instituted, assuming, of course, again, there's no issues with MILAT, which I have no reason to think there are. I'm just putting that disclaimer out there. Something like this should be in place, just in general, but to combat the problem that we have, the severity of it, I don't know if this is really going to be the solution that we need to actually solve the problem. And I really am starting to think that the problem starts at the primary school level. The problem starts at the foundation of our young people's development, the foundation of their expectations for themselves and the expectations that others have around them for those students. There was a study done, I'm not too sure how big of a study it was. They basically just did a small test with primary school aged kids. And they gave them some sort of assessment. And the ones that did well, they told some of them, good effort. That was a great effort. Proud of you, right? They did well, praise for the effort. And then another group, they praised for their intelligence. You're so smart. Look at you, you're so smart, you're so capable. And what they found was that the ones who were praised for their intelligence, they didn't really do well in subsequent retesting. The ones praised for the effort did. So there's a whole host of things with regards to child psychology and what's appropriate for a child to set them up for the future. And I think we're falling short. And then on top of that now, because it's not just the expectations for their academic success, which feeds into how serious they take school. Students who don't think they have an academic future, don't have good prospects in the job market to go further or to go far, to have an illustrious career as opposed to just a job. They'll take school less and less seriously as time goes on because their hope is chipped away. But then discipline is the same thing, where if you get some bad teachers, and they do have bad teachers, right? Not all teachers are bad. Maybe even the majority are good. But there are probably enough bad ones where the child will start to pick up on it, pick up on what's going wrong. And I've seen households where siblings have different quality teachers from the same school. And at some point, the child with the worst teacher is going to realize, hey, something's not right. How come my siblings' classes are different, are going smoother, structured better, he's learning more, he's achieving academic success, and I'm not. We go in the same school. They're going to pick up on that. And it's very easy for a child now to see where adults fail them. They start to get cynical, they start to lose faith, and they start to not want to listen to adults at all. And then, once you get to the age of 15, 16, where a lot of teenagers could be angry at the world, think they know better than adults, etc., etc., you add that into the mix, and then you have to wonder, I have a 15-year-old student, we have to expel him, he goes to MILAT, can that turn his life around? Or maybe it would have been better to look at our primary school system to see where potentially there's failings there and try to do something about it. Because at the end of the day, I hate to say it, but there's something to be said about students coming from private primary schools or highly rated government primary schools, then going into prestige government-assisted schools, and then continuing on from there. Right? That's not the only way, that's not the only path, but that tends to be a consistently good path. You could come from a relatively moderately good, mediocre primary school and get into a prestige school based off of your own merits. But I feel as though a lot of those students could not maintain that level of performance afterwards because of a whole host of reasons. So I applaud the minister for at least considering one of the consequences that we are suffering from in our education system. I don't think this is a solution to the problem. And I do believe that a good chunk of our problems at the secondary level will be solved if we solve the issues at the primary level, because that's the foundation of everything. And as I get older, I'm starting to realize more and more, you know, there's no such thing as enough time. And especially with children, watching my nephews grow up to me so quickly, you don't have opportunities to do a do-over. Each birthday only comes once. Each year only comes once. And as they get older, if they're put behind, trying to play catch-up is one of the most difficult things for any child when it comes to their academic advancement. And while I do think that we put too much into certain aspects of academics and we put too much pressure on our kids, to some extent, some of the children that are falling through the cracks, they can't even meet what I think would be reasonable standards. They're barely scraping by, if at all, and being set up for failure. All right. Let me just switch to another topic there before we'll take our first break. And the Chief Secretary has called out the Minister of Finance and Central Government for what he sees as shortfalls of budget allocations. So the long and short is he's looking at an amount to the tune of, let me get the total figure here. $166.4 million. But that is split up over the course of 6 years, give or take, from 2017 to 2023. Now, 2017 was the most at 56 million, and then 32 million for 2018, and then it starts to hover, 16.3 for 2019, 25.2 for 2020, 8 million for 2021, 12 million for 2022, 50 million for 2023. And the Chief Secretary is complaining, and I think he used one of the phrases that I myself don't like. I believe. Well, he calls it an illegal and unconstitutional conduct. I don't know if the Dispute Resolution Commission is part of the Constitution, but okay. But I think I read somewhere where he used the phrasing of a conspiracy against Tobago. But I could be wrong about that. My thing is, though, some of these shortfalls, in fact, the larger ones, were during the time of a PNM administration. More importantly, I do recall a while back, well before the local government election season, so I think it was in 2022, maybe mid-2022, I spoke to some councillors, I think from Penal Davy, who reported of basically saying, and their issues were also in local print media, that they had a shortfall in what was allocated to them, but not released to them, somewhere along the lines of tens of millions of dollars, just in 1 year. And it could have been, now here's the difference, it could have been something to the tune of a significant percentage. I'm hesitant to say, but because I might be misremembering, but I'm under the impression that it could be about half, somewhere around 50%. It could be a little bit higher or a little bit lower. But for some reason, I'm remembering it as a little bit higher. Meanwhile, the chief secretary, he's complaining about 166 million. Fine, but that's over the course of 6 years. When you look at an individual year and compare it to the, what was the budget allocation for this year? When you compare it to the annual budget allocation given to Tobago, it's not half. Let's just put it that way. And these were some of the things that local governments in Trinidad, bodies, had to face with year in and year out. Now, from what I understand unofficially, that included potentially some P&M bodies, right? That's why Mayor Joel Martinez was trying to find funds from donations, from charity, from the private sector, in order to do work to help uplift Port of Spain during his time. And I understand the Chief Secretary's situation. I understand he's correct on principle. The thing is, I don't know if he really is going to be able to argue a successful case, because relatively speaking, the THA is better off than many parts of Trinidad. Now, the finance minister did say, and this is where we could call him out a little bit, other areas of the country got cut, but the THA allocation didn't get cut. Well, cool, the allocation didn't get cut, but if you're not giving out the full allocation, then you're kind of playing semantics there with your PR spin. However, the amount, again, just last year, the amount, I believe, is 15 million. Now, that's not a small amount. But compared to other shortfalls, is it unreasonable? And now, to what extent should we be complaining to the government, hey, why have this budget where you're allocating money in the budget and then you're going to say, or not going to say, but you're just not going to release all of it? Now, on some level, I think the argument could be made that, look, a budget is not necessarily set in stone. Things will come up and things might have to be moved around. So I understand that we might not like it, but I think for the most part, the Chief Secretary might be overplaying his hand with this one here. If it was that they didn't get $166 million this year, or some significant amount of their allocation this year, that would be different. If it was that Tobago's situation was out of proportion to the rest of the country, as opposed to under proportion to the rest of the country, he would have a much stronger argument. I don't know if this is something that makes sense for him to push through, but I will acknowledge and be, what's the word, sympathetic to the fact that every $1 million, every $100,000, every $10,000 matters. The problem is it matters to every corner of our government. And to some extent now, unless he could prove that the money he's not getting is being siphoned off via corruption to illegal accounts or something of that matter, the government will more or less make the argument, well, what are we going to cut? Because we'll have to cut something and deny somebody else money to give him his $50 million for this year and the rest of the $166 million for the previous 5 years, of which not all were under the PDP/TPP. Some were under a PNM THA. So to what extent is it a bias against his government? Again, I don't know. All right, let's take a break. Well, actually, no. Now, let me finish off, and then we'll take a break. The last thing I want to speak about, and I want to remind my viewers, if you have not been keeping up or keeping this within your thoughts, as we have an ongoing or potential migrant situation in our own country, right, which seems to have stabilized a bit now, but it's still there. Stabilized does not mean solved. As we have concerns via local population for the people in the Gaza Strip, the civilians in the Gaza Strip, the innocents in the Gaza Strip that are being horrendously impacted by a conflict of which many of them, I suspect, don't even have a say in. Human Rights Watch activists are calling on the government to follow through with promises made earlier in the year in order to bring back home approximately 70 to 100 of our citizens, which constitutes women and children, some of whom might have reached legal adult age during the course of their time in Syria. To bring back our nationals from Syria, none of whom, from what I understand, were fighting age males when they were there and participated in any sort of the conflict or hostilities when they were there. And I understand and I get it. The sentiment towards migrants, but 2 migrants from that region, despite the fact that they are our nationals who originally came from TNT and went there, I think some of the philosophies will actually be applied to them. Because the EU has this issue. America has its own issue with Latin America, so it's kind of interesting that we're getting aspects of both the EU's Middle East issue and North America's and USA's Latin American issue. But for the Middle East issue, the politics in Europe, it's very contentious. Right now, the Polish government is basically saying, look, we don't want illegal immigrants here from that part of the world, and that has prevented certain aspects of the negative aspects of having these sorts of migrants coming in unfiltered, right? Legal migration, sure, but we don't have the large numbers of migrants that can't get jobs, that potentially might have to turn to crime just to survive, that might include criminal elements that might exploit their fellow migrants and cause a breakdown in law and order within any migrant community, as well as other aspects that I don't want to get into because I don't want to get into debate. But that whole thing about terrorism and bringing her back home, I mean, it's women and children, right? And I'll be hypocritical if I don't advocate for the children. Because one of the things I do say here is we already are now seeing children being killed on the streets or killed as collateral damage with gang violence. I just do wonder if somehow, yes, we got outraged when it's an individual child and we could put a face and a name to the travesty, but when it starts to become multiple children, all of a sudden it turns into a statistic, and that just becomes math and science, and it's so technical, and it no longer bothers us. 50 children in Syria, that's not a big deal, right? I just lamented about the educational difficulties where society and life kind of puts obstacles and causes children to feel disadvantaged, and then, you know, we have bad outcomes because of that. And here we have kids 4 years in a refugee camp or detention center. What is their future going to be like? And are we just fine saying, you know what, we expect it to be bad, so let them stay there so we don't have to deal with it, we don't have to deal with our own responsibility? Fact of the matter is, if it was any one of the rest of us, we would not agree to this. And you might want to say, oh, well, we won't do that. Listen, you might not be in the same circumstances that those women and children might find themselves in. But that is not to say that you can't find yourself in a similar situation. On principle, society is forged on the principles by which we live by, whether we like it or not. And if we decide to take the easy way out too often and undermine our principles, then when we want to ask ourselves what went wrong, where did we go wrong, as society starts to crumble around us, we will only have ourselves to blame. And it never starts off with a big thing. There's never an obvious start. It takes historians' analysis and they debate with hindsight where things like this starts off from. But I'm telling you, the little things are where it starts from. The little things turn to big things. This might seem big enough to those who are advocating for their return. But for the rest, it might seem very small. No. This is how it starts. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we will welcome my 2 colleagues who will be joining me on the program. Stay tuned to WSN. Your Content Capital will be right back.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios. But they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
Simon's Musical Supplies Limited. We are the specialist in new and used musical instruments, carrying top brands like Yamaha, Pearl River pianos, vinyl and Sabian cymbals, Remo and Evans drumheads and Fender guitars, just to name a few. Also a wide assortment of music books, pan and accessories. At Simon's, we service what we sell. Trust the leader. Call us now at 625-6412 or visit us at 20 Board Street, Port of Spain.
My name is Carl Media, and I'm the founder and the host of Ever Increasing Voice Ministries. Join me every Saturday and Sunday on WESN, this powerful station, at 9 a.m. on Saturdays, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. nightly. Also on Sundays, I'll be on at 7 a.m., 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. at night time. When you come here, we are getting people heavenly ready.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity, from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The newest book is here, Closer to the Church, the debut novel by author and former mayor Louis Lee Singh. Available at all the home store branches, Barataria, West Mall, Shogunas and C3 San Fernando. Paper-based bookshop 10 Nook Avenue, St. Anne's. WESN 30A Gattaca Street, Woodbrook. Metropolitan Bookshop, Ariapita Avenue, Woodbrook, and all RIK bookstores nationwide. Available online as paperback on Amazon.com and Kindle for e-readers. For more info, call 628-5835 or 389-6504. Also available from author Louis Lee Singh, I Used to Live in Heaven, Letters to My Granddaughters, and Local Government in Trinidad, Conspiracy Against the People.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1, find the style number on the tag. Step 2, match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3, search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movie Town, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole. It's for all of us in public.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
Young at heart, purpose-driven, patriot even. When you like to party, but are still passionate about discussing important issues, the only place where your needs will be met is WESN, Content Capital.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen, and I am joined by an illustrious panel. Of course, many of the viewers might know. To my right, attorney at law, Janelle John Bates. Janelle, good morning.
Good morning, good morning, viewers.
And while no stranger to the station, we do have a special guest with us today. I never thought I would have the opportunity to do this. In fact, I was going to let Keaton do this. Unfortunately, he couldn't be with us. But we have veteran journalist, host of WSN's 10 Questions, Mr. Andy Johnson himself. Mr. Johnson, good morning.
Call me Andy, man. Good morning.
Well, Andy, you've come on the show because there's something you want to speak about. Something that, when I heard about it, I tried looking it up online to see if there was any reporting done. And it seems as though it just hasn't been published very much, at least in print and online media. There were protests in UWI last week, you said, over the issue of the conflict going on between Israel and Palestine. And it reached, well, I don't know if I would say vandalism, but it kind of reached to heights that it's interesting that, you know, a lot of people might not be aware of what happened.
Yeah, well, it didn't get out, apparently. I heard about it from someone who is on the campus and so on, as a member of the faculty and them kind of things. And what I'm told is that, or what I was told, a group of students from a particular section of the university, a particular, what you call it, an academic stream, as it were, they got chalk and wrote up some things on a couple of the streets on the campus, expressing the view that they were supporting the Palestinian people given the aggression of Israel in there, and that it got to the attention of the authorities on the campus. And but what I was told is that well, they brought trucks and so on, water trucks and so on to wash it away. I think the students had to participate in that. And what I was told was that the students they were going to be made to pay the cost of doing that. I've been able to verify that, but I did get in touch with the deputy campus principal a couple of days ago to ask about it, because I was told that he had a difficulty with it. And he did say, well, yes, essentially he said that the administration believed that they should have gotten permission to do it. I don't know to what extent that is the procedure in the campus, and they didn't get permission, and that was the real issue. Not that they have a problem with it, but I still find that kind of curious, because in a couple of days you're going to be talking with a man who's coming here for a couple of days next week. He's written a book on something called Rebels at the Gate, and the book is about those students on the St. Augustine campus of the University of the West Indies who were integral in the explosion of the Black Power movement in 1970, and several of them are around with us still. You have Kafra Kambon, who was Dave Dabo, and the leader of it was a man called Geddes Granger, who then became a Candle Dagger, and a group of other students who were students and faculty who were on the campus at that time in 1969-70, that then spilled out into the streets of Trinidad and Tobago. And this, I would say, months before that, 1968 or 69, 10 Trinidad and Tobago students were deported from Montreal, Canada, because they participated in some protests in what was then the Sir George Williams University. It is now called Concordia. It has since been called Concordia. And in Mona and other places, Trinidad and Tobago students or West Indian students have been known to take part and sometimes take the lead in pointing out things that they considered to be necessary to be addressed by students. If you talk to somebody like David Abdullah, who was on campus at St. Augustine University of the West Indies, he could tell you about that. Student activism. There are people who say that, well, if you can't engage in activism on a university campus, where can you? So that's how some people are looking at it.
I mean, even in communist China, they had to have at various times crack down on student activism, because I guess once you get the education system in, and people start to be free thinking, if you teach them how to think, don't be upset when they start to think and have ideas that you might not agree with. So I do have to ask, is there anything to do with the fact of the content of what they were protesting in this? Because this is a highly contentious issue around the world. And of course, they're probably looking at other university students doing very similar things, all over North America, Europe, et cetera, et cetera. Did you get any sense that there was concerns over the content of the protest, that it was about Palestine?
Well, one is left to wonder, to speculate as to what it is that, you know, what if they get protests to write something on the road? What was drawn to my attention, the peculiarity of it, it's not that they marked up a building or they defaced a building or they defaced any property on the campus. They wrote on the road, you know, whatever it was that they wrote.
And it wasn't permanent, it could be washed away by the rain.
And and listening to your discourse about the history of student activism, what you would have said about the 1970s is that the protest was a new and it spilled over into society.
Yes, yeah.
So perhaps that could also be an issue. This Palestine-Israel issue is a very contentious topic. So far, the local involvement in it has been low-key. But perhaps that is what we're trying to prevent. We're trying to prevent a spillover of this whole conflict or the two sides into the general public. So it's like a nip it in the bud. It's the broken window theory, perhaps, in effect. If you leave a broken window, it grows into more and the whole community falls down. And then the other second issue is that you said that they didn't get permission. So there's one thing to encourage activism and free speech and thought in a university, but it's the way you go about it as well. We already have a problem with indiscipline in this society. So again, I could see those two things, preventing spillover into society and not encouraging indiscipline as being the issue in this issue, minus the whole content, which is already an inflammable
and the reason on death, so you classify that as indiscipline?
I would see it as in this. If you know there are rules to how, because there are rules in society about how one must protest, even in general, so you have to get permission from the police, etc. I am assuming, again, I do not know, I attended UE for my master's, but I don't know what the handbook says about protests.
Yeah.
But if there are rules about it, then there are rules about it.
Here's the question.
Breaking the rules is indiscipline.
If they asked for permission and were denied, for let's just say questionable reasons for the sake of argument, then would you have an issue with them carrying out the protest? Because now we're coming to the point where, to what extent are their rights being denied?
Right. So if you have an issue with the protests, and if you were denied protesting, then you should know there are ramifications. If you continue, and if you are okay with the ramifications, go ahead. But you must know any action you undertake, there are ramifications. So that, and plus there's social media. I am sure if they had applied to protest and they were denied, and then they took that to social media, they probably would have garnered a lot of support from the general public that might have put pressure on the university to allow them to continue with their protests. So again, there's a way we must go about things in these times.
I do find this interesting because given our response to our nationals in Syria and what a lot of members of the public have expressed, we don't want that here, we don't know what they might, I do wonder if the general public's view on issues like this with the Middle East.
You're talking about the Trinidad and Tobago citizens who are still looking to come back.
They're still looking to come back, right? Yeah. There's a fear that it will bring bad elements back with them, right? And I do wonder if while if there's a section of the population...
But inside of that, there's the point that a lot of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago who are there, they're not by their own choosing, because you're talking about the wives of fellows who went and their children. So,
but my point is, seeing the negative reaction by some citizens, I do wonder to what extent the students would have gotten support outside of those who have already protested over this issue. Yeah. Of course, the flip side is we already had public protests over the issue, so it kind of digs into your theory a little bit. Andy, was there any sense that the students doing this were in any sort of way more than just, well, we don't like what's going on, we're going to paint some chalk in the ground?
We don't like what's going on, I mean, here or in
with regards to what's going on in Israel, Palestine, like their sentiments, because, not all protesters are created equal. Some can be very peaceful and well-meaning. Some can be a bit more radical and aggressive. Yeah, was there any sense of what side of that line we were seeing?
There's some of us who are just born to participate in things like that, I've been in situations many times when, people just join a thing because people are making noise, people are protesting something. Yeah. No, but my thing really was to see to what extent, as a journalist, I could put that out there and see what comes of it. How people will regard that, given the fact that, like I say, those of us who've been around, those of us who've read that part of the history of activism in Trinidad and Tobago will know that many a line of consciousness about this, that, or the other began on the campus of St. Augustine, at Mona, and in Barbados, the current campus principal in St. Augustine, Professor Rosemary Ben Antoine. I got to know her because as a lecturer, as a senior lecturer and a department head or official at Cave Hill, she was photographed with a group of students who were protesting something or the other in Cave Hill. That is how I began to get to know her.
Well, then again, the students should again pay attention to history and be smart. Get some teachers to support them, and perhaps again you react. Then this time we have to be smart about how we go about things. Right. We can't just, hey, let me just go on the street and start. We have to be intelligent about the way we're doing things, and especially if we want, the whole point is to get people to support the idea of supporting Palestine, right? I'm assuming that's why they did it. So we have to be intelligent about how we get this support, especially in a very polarizing issue.
Right, an issue that has preconceived notions.
Yes.
People might make assumptions, and if you're not careful with your communication, they might make preconceived assumptions about you, right? Thankfully, they didn't vandalize the face of building. They just wrote on the wall.
Because I'm already seeing that sort of, I guess, vandalism, if you want to call it, on the Aranguez overpass. There's Free Gaza written on the overpass. I don't know if people notice that. So people are writing things about the Palestine Israel.
And the overpass coming into Port of Spain from the highway as well.
They have that as well. But so again, maybe we want to keep it. Yeah, we want to keep it.
But my next question is, because in the past, of course, all of the protests in the past went over this issue. There were other issues, local issues. And I have lamented on the fact that, look, we have issues here that are ongoing. Economy, crime, education system, that just doesn't seem to get the nation's attention, right?
Yes, because the Black Lives Matter keeps playing in my mind, and they were the Trinidadians joined in that whole Black Lives movement. Although I could see why, because Palestine, Israel, as like nations, we are not Palestinians, we are not Israelis, but there are a large number of Trinidadians who are black. So I could see how the Black Lives movement may capture the attention of a lot of Trinidadians.
But my thing is, on the flip side, if we kind of, because I'm of two minds, right? I would like to see us be concerned with our own issues, at least as much as we're concerned about other people's issues.
You don't think we are? You don't think there's...
Well, I'm not sure. But
not in the multitudes that probably we should believe, but
the flip side is, I don't want to say, no, we need to redirect our attention and kind of put a damper on the people who want to protest over Palestine, because there's a fear that I have that if you put a damper on freedom of expression, it will just suppress all protesting, and it will erode any attempt of the nation trying to now speak out and rally over our own issues.
Are we even serious about protesting in this country? About serious protesting to achieve a goal, or just one day we walk in the street and that's it?
You mean en masse? Because there are always people who are looking for issues. Some of them go on to form political parties.
It's true.
And so on. But, and there are those people who would be involved in any march, in any demonstration. There are some, I call them serial protesters and so on. Regardless of what the issues, you would find some people involved in it. And another point to make about that the first wave movement, they were protesting how they alleged to have been treated by police, because they were early o'clock in the game. In this Israel-Hamas issue, they were outside the U.S. Embassy, and they noted the fact that, well, the police were sort of guarding them and keeping them off on the guardrails from whatever they perceived might have happened, and they took a note of that, and they would say, well, these are the forces of law and order trying to prevent us from making a statement. Well, they said that, Umar Abdullah, trying to prevent them from making a statement. In solidarity, what is happening there. My other sort of point of notice is that almost to a man, public sentiment in Trinidad and Tobago is against Israeli action and pro-Palestine, if not Hamas.
I don't get that sentiment. And I don't get that sentiment from a Christian standpoint. And this is something I would have mentioned to Sean off air. Growing up in a Christian home, I know most Christians, Protestant Christians anyway, I'm not sure what the Catholic viewpoint is, are very much in favor of Israel, because it is believed that Israel are the chosen people of God. So I again, percentage-wise, I wouldn't agree with you, because I know most Protestant Christians are in favor of Israel, or there are some of us, and I would say us, who are kind of conflicted, because I know I would get criticized by my Christian brethren for saying I cannot say I am pro-Israel in this situation. I know I'm definitely against Hamas because of the extreme behavior, but I just wanted to point out from a Christian perspective, a lot of people are very much pro-Israel in this country.
Well, yes, because it's you know, and to me that's what I was sort of bred into me when I grew up with my grandmother and her generation. She was what they call a spiritual Baptist and so on. But some people's reading of the Bible puts Israel in a particular kind of way. You know, people talk. You know, some people who sort of juxtapose or equate Israel with heaven in terms of where they will go. You know, the way they.
God's chosen people. That's the phrase.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Christianity came about for a reason, but I mean, historically, because this is one of those things that has always interested me, the tension of it. But I have reached the point now where I call it the Hatfields and McCoys. It's a feud that's perpetuated just for the sake of perpetuating it at this point. That's what it feels like. There's enough elements on both sides that are not willing to compromise, right? But of course, when one side basically, their starting position was, well, you the other side cannot exist. We cannot allow you to exist. You know, that's setting up a conflict now where even if Israel, right, the side that is not supposed to exist, was in the right at some point in the beginning, I have to question now, what is the point of what they're trying to do now? Do they honestly think that it's going to work? So I can understand why modern sentiment is against them. But I do wonder to what extent we have people protesting on the issue, but your protest is based on information that you would have recently seen in foreign media, recently seen on the internet, which would have not included stuff that happened not just in the 70s and 60s during the height of open war in the region, but in 1948 when Israel was started, or even before that,
there are some people who started that. There are some people who oppose everything on that basis because they disagree with what happened in 1948.
Well, the Arab states certainly, that's their position from the get-go.
But I mean, there are people who see everything in Israel as Zionism against which
But here's the thing. A lot of people will say, ooh, colonialism, and look what slavery did to us. And look what Western Europe did conquering the rest of the world. Well, to some extent, one could argue that place was Jewish, and then it was conquered by the Romans, and it was conquered by the Muslims, and it was conquered by the Christians, and it was reconquered by the Muslims. So to what extent, who gets the original claim?
Don't forget the British, because it's the British who came in and basically caused this separation of Arab.
Turks, and then there's the British. So whose claim takes the greatest precedent? That's why to me I'm like, are we willing to acknowledge the fact that this is a bit of a mess?
It's a conundrum that I don't know that there's any solution to it. You know, it's amazing. I have but he's dead now, but somebody from my mother's generation say, right? His name was Charles Mitchell in the village that's in Los Bajo. They call him Satan. That was his name. But he didn't match his name at all. He was somebody who hardly spoke. He was, you know,
soft-spoken.
Yes, and all of that.
Well-intentioned and
all of that. But until one day when Mr. Manning was Prime Minister, I think the first time, and Mr. Manning had gone on this tour of some countries in the Middle East, and he went to Israel, and he came back talking about getting defense equipment and so on from Israel. This is the first time that was the first and probably the only time I ever heard that guy say anything political. He said he going to Israel, and he was offended by that. I said, well, you know, I didn't know he had political views on what that.
Israel was at one point partnered with apartheid South Africa. Right, so yes,
but and that is what I learned. That is something I learned trying to research this topic. That actually Nelson Mandela actually was in support of the Palestinian liberation. What does the O stand for? I can't remember, but I was listening to it, and he basically said, "We are with anybody who supports us against apartheid." And Palestine and the other Arab nations stood with us. And I was in awe watching this clip of Nelson Mandela and watching the Jews' reaction in the background. They want to stone Nelson Mandela, and I never knew he was a Palestinian supporter. But I get his point. Whoever supports me, I support them.
I mean, I guess to finish the talk here, is it really, you know, people getting caught up in what on the stage of nations is just politics. It's just, real politics is just the facts of life, whereas for us, the people on the street, we get so emotional and over the cause, but the decision makers, they're not that emotional, It's cost-benefit analysis right across the board.
Well, when it comes down to it sometimes, but there are principles that some of us must stand for,
yes.
and so on and so on. And inside of that, also something that I haven't seen reported at all, but a friend and colleague of mine sent me something which was a statement of resignation by somebody in the office of the United Nations, the head of human rights.
Yes.
Because of, he's saying that person is saying that in this situation, it appears that the United Nations is powerless to do anything about it except express whatever the Secretary General has expressed, and which drew the ire of the government in Israel. So that this person is saying there's a lot of hypocrisy in those high chambers inside the UN in addressing the matter, and couldn't take it anymore. But I haven't seen that reported.
The UN is a combination of states, and different states have different viewpoints. So it's, in a sense, they have to kind of almost toe the line, compromise. And how I view this whole thing, honestly, is that this two-nation state they created in 1948 was like creating a bad marriage from the beginning.
So the two-state solution.
The two-state solution, a Jewish state and an Arab state. And in most bad marriages, there's no innocent, both sides are to blame for the bad marriage, and that's how I see it.
Yeah, well, I was in the discussion last Friday in which that point was being discussed. I think somebody in the UN or somebody in the group of leaders trying to find a resolution saying that there are nobody's hands are clean.
None.
But some people object to that. And so
folks, we have to end on there, but I will just say this to add to Mr. Johnson's point. What would be required by the UN to solve this might be a level of military commitment the UN has never done. I repeat, never done. Not even the Somalian peacekeepers, who were more or less sent packing when it's all said and done. That level of military commitment, I don't think the UN has the stomach for it, but we will see. I hope that something can be done. I don't know if anything will be done. Folks, we have to take a break. When we come back, we open the phone lines. I want to say thank you to my two colleagues for joining me. It's such a pleasure to have you. And of course, always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be on a platform with the esteemed journalists of your nature.
Folks, we'll be right back after this.
Here is the WESN News on the Hour. I am Sarah Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Bamboo Settlement Number 2, $28,000 guard booth and barrier completed. 68-year-old Arima man robbed of cash by a lone bandit. And regionally, Jamaica and Mexico secure semi-final spots in the CONCACAF Nations League in tickets to 2024 Copa America. Now for the details. Inshan Ishmael, activist and businessman, has announced that the construction of the $28,000 guard booth and barrier in Bamboo Settlement Number 2 will be finalized tomorrow. Ishmael clarified that these security enhancements are not intended to restrict access, but rather to implement a card system. Visitors entering the area will receive a card stamped by the patronized business. However, those unwilling to adhere to the system will be required to have photographs taken along with their vehicle details to be maintained on record. Ishmael emphasized the urgency of implementing these security measures as Christmas approaches, expressing concerns about potential criminal attacks in the community. An early morning walk did not go as scheduled for a 68-year-old Arima man after he was robbed of cash by a lone bandit. Police said the man was walking along Kilwan Avenue to Mpuna Road around 6:15 a.m. on Wednesday when he saw a man in a hoodie walk past him. The suspect then attacked the elderly man from behind, pushing him to the ground and kicked him several times. The thief then dug into the man's pants pocket and stole $100 in cash and a bank card before running away. Arima CID are continuing investigations. Regionally, in an exhilarating series of matches, Jamaica and Mexico have both advanced to the semi-finals of the CONCACAF Nations League, securing their places in the 2024 Copa America in the process. El Tricolor claimed a decisive 2-0 victory over Honduras on Tuesday night, while Jamaica pulled off a dramatic come-from-behind 3-2 win to stun Canada. With their progression, Jamaica, Mexico, Panama, and the U.S., all of whom have qualified for the Copa America, will now vie for supremacy in the 2023-2024 CONCACAF Nations League finals to be held in Arlington, Texas. Well, that's it. News on the Hour on WESN. I am Sarah Ali. Thank you for watching.
My name is Carl Media. I am the founder and the host of Ever Increasing Voice Ministries. Join me every Saturday and Sunday on WESN, this powerful station, at 9 a.m. on Saturdays, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. nightly. Also on Sundays, I'll be on at 7 a.m., 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. at night time. When you come here, we are getting people heavenly ready.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity, from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Welcome back, one and all, to Talking Point on WSN. And we have a special treat for those who call in today. We have the man himself. He has remained veteran journalist, host of 10 Questions on WSN. Mr. Andy Johnson has agreed to stay with me for the call-in segment. So he is available. You could call in and ask myself and Mr. Johnson our opinions on things. On whatever you want to ask. You could talk about the topic. We could speak about what we spoke about earlier with regards to the university students doing a protest. It's not necessarily getting a lot of press, and it was getting some pushback from the authorities there because they did not have permission. You know, what do you think about it? Did you hear about it? Do you have an opinion of it? Do you want to hear more about it? Or any other topic that you might want to ask Mr. Johnson about. He's here to take calls, folks. Of course, it's also the last chance for the week to get your say in, because I know that some of you might be holding on to things you weren't able to ask earlier in the week. You could still have a chance to do so today. But Mr. Johnson, thanks once again for agreeing to stay on here. And while we wait for calls, and we don't necessarily know how long to wait, but I will take the opportunity now to just ask, you know, I find that we have a lot of issues, and we have a lot of causes for the issues, and everybody wants to place the blame on one thing. But generally speaking, what do you make of of our society, because I feel as though, ultimately speaking, it comes down to what the people want and what the people are willing to do about it. You know, a politician can't know what you want if you don't tell him what you want, if you don't make it clear what they want. And similar to what we're talking about the lack of protests with regards to crime and economy and everything, I do wonder if the population is sort of apathetic now. We're not expressing ourselves.
Yeah, I think we have a caller who says that.
Duck any question like a pro. We have a caller from Cascade. Good morning. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning to you, Sean. Good morning to you, Andy. So good to have you that I could ask you a question finally. Andy,
hey.
Tell me, do you believe the quality of students we now have on campus are of a lesser quality than the students we had on campus in the 70s?
It's a different generation. When you talk about quality, in what I suppose you're talking about people who are given to speaking out and taking positions on issues and so on.
I'm speaking to the issue of consciousness. And maybe I should restate the question. Do you believe the students we have had over the last 2 to 3 decades are less conscious students, and they are primarily concerned about their certification rather than having the consciousness to, as it were, be engaged in building a better civil society?
Yeah, in a sense, but times are different in my view, and people who go to university now go there for different reasons, not having anything to do. I think we were more in 50 years ago in 1970 and so 53 years ago, the society was in a state where a lot of building was going on. We came out of colonialism, and we were looking to decide our pathways and so on. There was a different mentality among people at the time, and some of that was happening on the campus. And it's not only us, because there were other West Indian students. I mean, part of there was a man called Carl Blackwood. He was Jamaican. He was on the campus here. There was one of the persons in the lecture was Bill Revere. He was from Dominica. He was sent back after a period of time, and I think those things stick with me. It was a time because it was coming out of 1968 with what was happening in Chicago and elsewhere in the United States, elsewhere in Europe and France and so on, and those things had a spillover here. We've gone through a kind of reorientation of mind, and so we are at that point now where people simply want to spend more time on their own sort of affairs, on their own progressions, and less on social issues and developing a social conscience. But sometimes it doesn't take a throng of people or 1 million people to move something, and you never know when it will happen, when it will click.
Well, may I ask you something?
Yeah.
Do you feel the lack of consciousness, and the question is an important one on this occasion, do you feel the lack of consciousness and the lack of commitment to country as coming certainly from the students who are on campus? Because people go for certification now, and we go and we get in and we get out. Has to do with the fact that this country was blessed with oil revenue?
Not necessarily, because oil is one thing. We have been blessed with I would say, other kinds of goodies beside oil. It's not only in that. But my thing, to me, it's a different time. But you have any number of people who live for I would say, pushing back and live for, what was the term I'm looking for? To raise the consciousness raising and who live for being able to speak out and to get people to join them. But we all, to a large extent, we have our own agendas, many of us.
Finally, my last question. Do you believe the very restrictive laws, i.e. for being able to stage a protest, is what has killed the appetite for Trinidadians to engage in protest action.
To some extent, but there are people who are not impeded by that at all. There are people who get out on the street at the drop of a hat. There are people who always find that we should always be pushing back. We should not settle for people. I don't know who came up with the phrase. I think it was a book, a title by Megan Kelly, who was a TV presenter on one of the channels in one of the networks in the United States. I think she was with Fox and so on. She has a book called Settle for More. So there are people who think like that still, and sometimes it doesn't take much to rev up a disturbance, as the Guyanese would say. Some people hold their positions back for what they see as the right moment.
Well, Andy, I hear that, and that only comes about when you have a level of consciousness. For example, across the United States today, on most of the campuses, if not all, there are serious protests going on the Palestinian issue. Listening to the panel this morning, I realized that some members of the panel are wanting in terms of having the history right, but that is not why I'm calling. I don't think Trinidadians, by and large, have an understanding of the issues across with the Palestine and the Middle East. I mean, you use the term Zionist, and I was almost tempted to text you to say, could you please, Mr. Johnson, explain to them what Zionism means as against, what we believe is the role of Israel. So that I leave you at that time, and you may want to elucidate on Zionism before you wrap.
All right, I think
thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kasky. The one thing where I will disagree with his last statement is I'm not too sure if I remember the context of how the phrase was used, because the misuse might have been by protesters, so then you're using it to describe what or how they're protesting, and thus subsequently you're misusing the word, but it's because to properly...
Yeah, no, what I was saying is that there are some people who when they see or hear or refer to Israel, that's the perspective from which they see it from.
Yeah. So we have our caller from San Fernando. Good morning, caller. Caller, good morning. Hello?
Hey, good morning, Sean.
Hey, morning.
Good morning, Andy Johnson.
Morning.
Let me first say, I looked at your on the TTT anniversary special. That was a nice change to everything. Your short interview there was welcomed.
Thank you very much.
Let me, Sean, you started this morning. You started this morning talking about the education system.
Yeah.
And which I remember saying this to you, that the problem, we have to look at the primary schools first.
Right, okay.
But that's where they're coming from. However, they come to the primary school with the problem. As Lola Christopher mentioned that, I think these things start in the home. This is where the genesis of our problem starts. It starts in the home with parenting. And we can look at that parenting and look at all the ills that we are seeing in the society. And understand that is the genesis of it. I listened to you and Janelle here this morning talking about the protest at the university and Palestine. And she made a comment which I totally disagree with. And I have to agree with Andy Johnson when he says that the sentiment, the general sentiment, is with sympathy to the Palestinians in Trinidad. I can tell you that. That is the general sentiment, and I think we hit the nail on the head where the history that you all displayed, when that both of you talked about, you and Janelle, you all need to brush up on your history. You all, as younger people, you all may not have all the facts or all the information out there. And granted, I'm not disparaging you all. I love you all for bringing up the topic and for having Janelle there. This also speaks to Sean. If you remember, you would have been very young when apartheid in South Africa. Apartheid in South Africa ended because of protests all over the world, and protests that same protest is in the university there. That was part of it. Part of it is, and I disagree with the UE management or the UE vice principal about asking the students to pay for the cleanup.
No, let me say that this is what I heard, and I didn't verify that, but that is what I was told.
Okay. Now let me end by saying I have two children in the university right now, on that campus, and going back to what Louis said, I believe that they are not as conscious. I try, but they are not as conscious as some of us in the past. Look, only Sunday, my daughter who goes to university asked me. She said, "Daddy, you have a Quran on the bookshelf?" Yes. And she was commenting. My eldest daughter took her for coffee, and she said that she was telling me that you read the entire Quran. I said, I read almost all those books on the bookshelf. I said, and I keep encouraging you all to read these books. I said, it's just to increase your knowledge and to have a wider understanding of what this world is all about. So, we have a population that's a younger population that are not as aware, and they just, sorry to say this, some of you all are just stumbling around trying.
All right, so can I ask you something based on the fact that you said you read the Quran? Because again, in the last...
I really can't hear you.
We have issues with the caller hearing us respond.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Mr. San Fernando. I'll just say this. I agree with you, because one of the things Janelle and we've spoken about, at least with regards to our local politics, because, I guess the hope is always, well, the people in power, if you don't like them, they can't stay there forever, right? And other people lament, well, we can't vote for the other side, they're just as bad, whoever you vote for. But we're also acknowledging the fact that, and she found this alarming herself, that a lot of young people don't want to get involved, don't seem to care. They just want to put their heads in the sand, stay within their corner of the country, and whatever happens with the government that, decides and determines the fate of the rest of us, it's not up to them. So you're right. I can't fault you for saying that, Mr. San Fernando. And if I wasn't on the show, I might have been the same way. I can't say that I would have been no great political activist fighting for change myself. I mean, part of it is it's difficult to find out, where to start and who to put your faith in and to back and move behind. We have a caller on the line, Elsa Kuro. Good morning, caller. You're on here. Caller, good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Morning.
Okay, I would like to make a contribution to the program with respect to crime among young blacks. Hello, you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Yes. Now, people speak about crime among young blacks, but there is something that people is missing. Mr. Johnson will be able to verify this to some extent. In the 70s, after what we call the Black Power uprising, right, there were a kind of consciousness in the country among blacks, right? For instance, okay, if you was a violent fella and you come around people, they used to call you a rope man. Sparrow make a calypso on it too, right? We used to call you a rope man because we don't want no violence around. People used to say peace and love and whatnot. Now, somebody dropped the ball from that period. I don't want to blame the politicians, but instead of teaching black history in school, right, people feel if they talk about that, they'll be talking about race. Now, the young Africans don't know anything about their foreparents, what their foreparents went through, right? And this is one of the major problems in the black diaspora. Even in the Caribbean, we've seen it here. It is not only in Trinidad, It's not only in Trinidad we have black gangs and so on. We have it throughout the Caribbean now. Now, I am saying if these people understand, these young people understand what their foreparents went through, right? Imagine you have killings here. People could be killing their own family and they don't know because they drop a brother in St. Joseph, they drop one in Labrador, just drawing references now. They drop one in St. Vincent, they drop in Greendot, and the family was split, right? Nobody tried to educate them except one person, by the way. One person, Mr. David Mohammed, who are not failing at all in what he's doing in teaching young blacks. They must try to be self-sufficient, don't steal from people, right? Try to teach them the history and whatnot, and he's succeeding in it. Why we don't have a program like that in the schools, right? Is it that Africans in politics are ashamed to speak about slavery and the effect it had on the effect it have on young Africans today because they don't know the history? Instead of that, what we have pulling and tugging. You watch the behavior in Parliament. Watch the behavior in Parliament, and you tell me, if the youth don't see that. You have, coming to the end of it, you have a policeman, a soldier that was arrested when somebody went in the station to talk about robbery and so on. Nobody thought about taking that same person and carry them around one or two stations in the area to see if some of those other people with them were real police. Nobody talk about that. Okay? Only the soldier was arrested. Supposing the other people around was in the station of duty, I am not getting down on the police here because without the police we can't live in peace here. Okay? But these are just some of my contributions. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, caller.
Yeah,
Mr. Johnson, I don't know.
But with them, we are living in peace. With the police around, but probably doing the best they could. I'm not sure. But
with the time that we have left, though, to what extent? I mean, I understand on an academic level, there's a displacement that cuts a segment of our population from their culture. The East Indian heritage is alive and well, at least to some extent, right? But the African diaspora, which could extend to the Caribbean and a whole host of other places around the world, to what extent is that lack of a cultural heritage, the tangible passing down of the teachings of ancestors making a difference in society? Because the flip side of that is I myself are very much disconnected from my own Chinese heritage. I'm half Chinese, right? Although I do understand, because I do have to some extent that connection that is intangible within me, you know, and I don't even know where it came from.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the problem is, because I could cite a number of books which tried to deal with that aspect of the development of life and peoples and communities in Trinidad and Tobago. If you read even, let's say, the late Michael Anthony's A Year in San Fernando, Towns and Villages in San Fernando, you read some of the sociological stuff by the late Professor Selwyn Ryan and the other, but Dr. what's her name, Rhoda Reddock, you know, about women and activism and work in Trinidad and Tobago. And there are others talking about the history, so you know, where we, you know, Hazel Brown talking about, you know, communities of Afro-Trinidadians, whether it's Belmont, whether it's other parts of the country, how some of us, our foreparents came here, the kinds of situations they had to live under. Dr. What's his name, who was Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, Terence Farrell, wrote a piece in the paper about how, you know, how his mother was raised and how she raised them, you know, trying to pass on legacies of how some of us grew up.
Because that's the flip side, that's the counter to the argument that I hear from the States, and I think it applies to us. In the 50s and maybe the 40s and so on, it's not as though some of the issues we see within the inner city communities, whether East Port of Spain, whether in America, in New York or Baltimore, whatever, it's not as though those things existed back then. The level, the scope, it's relatively new. There was a time when the black community in America and in Trinidad was, one could argue, potentially better off on various metrics. And to what extent is the problem or the phenomenon new, and then maybe we're misidentifying it? Or this might be a contributor, but it's not the only contributor.
It's not the only thing, yeah. And the politics is difficult because, you know, you have to, in a society such as ours, and there are many others, you know, we like to think about, you know, we are so unique because we have these two major races and how we live among ourselves. on the one hand, we talk about, the songs that speak to that. We sew together Indian and African, and then on another, we criticize the fact that, people see things happening and saying, well, there's only the Indo-Chinese prospering, and you have people who support that, and this fight between these two major parties, Indos versus Afros. And some people see that, some people use that as their own means of holding on to some turf. When, I look at it and say, well, okay, so we have a small group of people who try to maintain their heritage from among the first peoples who were said to have been here.
Right.
And they don't agree among themselves, as to what should be and what shouldn't be.
Could it be that we just, each race, each demographic, each culture has its own problems?
Yeah.
And this is the expression, Indo-Trinidadians have their own cultural and societal issues within their community, Afro-Trinidadians, Chinese Trinidadians, etc., and we just have to, perhaps each race has to take a hard look at themselves if they want to sort out their own problems and not necessarily compare themselves to others, so to speak, or at least not completely.
Yeah, and we have to redefine what it is to be a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, that's a good point as well. Yeah. Mr. Johnson, it has been a pleasure. I must admit I was very much surprised when I was presented with the opportunity to have you on Talking Point. I hope that it will not take 3 years for another appearance. You're welcome with any issue that you want to air out at any time. But I don't know if you have any last words to say.
No, it's just been my pleasure. It's something. I had gotten sort of disaccustomed to being up at certain hours and being serious and so on. But you do it when it's necessary. It's been a pleasure. I just ask people to stick around in an hour, so I'll be back talking about what's the program today. We call it crime and the justice system in Trinidad and Tobago, looking at these two cases in which people who spent the better part of their lives in prison are looking to come out, and what is their new thinking in the question of justice in Trinidad and Tobago. So stick around for that in this week's edition of 10 Questions, not too long from now.
And folks, I do not plug 10 Questions enough. That is my fault. That is my fault, because I have told Mr. Johnson, and Keaton and I always are amazed at how interesting the topics that Andy gets. Sometimes, to us, it seems out of nowhere, and I guess this is why he is the veteran journalist, the senior journalist, and we are just young upstarts who are now getting our feet wet in this whole situation. But if you don't look at 10 Questions, I am telling you, look at 10 Questions. You will get insights on important issues, some of which you might not even realize are important issues, folks.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And with that, we will say adieu. I want to thank all the callers. I want to, of course, thank again my colleagues for joining me today. This is Talking Point on WESN. That's Andy Johnson. I'm sure Michael Small. You can make today a good day if you try, as my co-host always says. And we will see you next week. Mr. Johnson will be seeing you at 10 o'clock. Bye-bye.